Exactly.
Okay.
It's amazing how quickly I've come used to.
So let's bring this meeting to attention, to order. All right. Roll call. Let's see. Joe.
Here.
Jane. Helen. Tricia. Jeff.
Present.
John. And myself. Those absent. Steve Geisels. Is Bill on the on Skype? I don't see him. Okay.
See Bruce.
All right. So for the notes, Steve Geisels and Bill McNally are not in attendance. Okay. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda for today's meeting?
So
Thanks, Jeff. Is there a second? Patricia, thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition to our agenda today?
We're in person, so we got to get used to this new dynamic.
Yeah.
This is
As
my first one, actually.
As Debbie pointed out, this is the second official board member in this building, or board meeting in this building. Only the second time. Thank goodness for getting back to a sense of normal. So,
Here's Bill.
Great, Bill. So, I'm just going to move right into our guest speakers. Chief Jason Vanderveen, and I'm sorry I didn't get your.
I'm Bruce Ansel. I'm the chair of the Board of Commissioners for Fire District 1.
Just could I get the spelling of your last name, please?
ANSELL.
Thank you so much.
The floor is yours, gentlemen.
wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here today. And I am here to talk to inform you about Proposition 2021-3, which is on the ballot as we speak. It's a levy lid lift for North Whatcom Fire and Rescue, which is Fire District 21. This was unanimously voted on by the board, or unanimously approved by the board to be placed on the ballot. And what it is it's a measure to raise our levy lid lift, raise our levy rate from currently $1.15 up to $1.45. This is the first time we've asked the voters in 12 years, and it would be the first raise of the levy in 14 if it were approved. So we've been making ends meet all these years. So some of the reasons that we chose to do this, or that the commissioners chose to do this, was the passage of time has eroded our levy, and as property values go up, our levy rate goes down. I-747, which is the $30 car tab, tax from 2001 maybe, limits government from raising its rate, raising its revenue 1% based on assessed valuation per year, including new construction. So the district's levy rate, even though home values go up, 20% or 10%, our budget can only go up 1% each year, plus the value of new construction. So it has placed constraints on our budget as we, employees don't cost 1% more a year, apparatus doesn't cost 1% more a year, fuel, all those things. We've stretched it out as long as we can go. To be quite honest with you, in the past, there has not been a really deep dive into financial planning at North Whatcom and how big, large capital purchases were made. We were in 2000, North Whatcom only came together in 2006, and that was great and exciting. And they hired a whole bunch of us, and we started going on calls, but the background work, unfortunately, wasn't done by past administrators. I have been the fire chief since I became interim chief in November of 2019, and then I became chief when COVID became a thing. So it's been an interesting ride. I guess I should back up a little bit about me. I've been with North Whatcom for 14 years. Before that, I was a captain with the city of Linden. I've been in the fire service since 1995, and actually started my fire service career as a resident of Semiahmoo. So, this area is my home. My family and I live in the Linden area, and I had a unique opportunity to step into administration from the line. I'd been a lieutenant for 8 years. Had a unique opportunity to kind of test drive an administrative position, and the commissioners elected to do a master plan, or kind of a frame off restoration of the fire district. Take a look at all the nuts and bolts of it, and out of that, I was presented a very unique opportunity to become the fire chief. It's been quite a ride. But one of the things, having not been an administrator, that I noticed right away was there's no plan, right? Or there's a plan, but it's not very deep. And when you have large capital expenses that need to get, in my homeowner's budget, if we want to put a roof on, we got to plan for a little bit. If we're going to buy a car, we got to plan for a little bit, save some money, and then do it. You just can't live your life on credit. Now, to the district's credit, we are not in debt. We have no debt. We are a cash functioning business. But new eyes in administration, some new eyes like Commissioner Ansel here in the elected leadership of the board, caused us to once again take a deep look and realize that, wow, you just can't replace 3 fire engines in a year at $700,000 a piece on a $6 million budget, and have employees and put fuel in them and do all these other things, right? So we started kind of looking at, okay, so how do we make this thing work in the long term? I joke with Commissioner Ansel that my youngest is 7, so I'm in this for the long haul. This is going to work. But it required some honest conversations and some honest planning. And we hired a consultant, a financial consultant, someone that's spent his life in municipal finance, to help us take a look at the books, take a look at the past, take a look at the future. And what it showed us was that we need to raise our levy rate in order to do this in a responsible cash basis, so that the money we're taking in goes out towards capital expenses, towards employees, towards operations, and all these things can be funded to the dollar until we, in a short, responsible time, less than 12 years, come back to the voters and say, hey, we need to relook at our levy rate. So what we've done here is a 6-year plan, and it funds the operation, everything except for buildings. So if we had to build a new fire station, I'm going to be transparent. So we have to come back to the voters and say this, we would need a bond measure for a new building. But this funds fire engines, ladder trucks, water tenders, ambulances. And when I'm buying a fire engine. Our last fire engines were bought 11 years ago. They were $500K. Now they're upwards of $700,000.
Or a cheap one.
What's that? For not a parade rig, for a toolbox that gets the guys and gals there safely so that they can do their work. Ambulances are the same thing. They used to be $100,000. Now they're $200,000. These things, you paint it red and add fire to it, it gets super expensive. So we've got apparatus that needs to be replaced. We've got equipment that has a service life, just like any other kind of manual labor type business. Our equipment runs out. Chainsaws wear out after getting beat up. Equipment, bunker gear wears out. And we have a lot of, I call them unfunded mandates. I don't know if that's actually the right word, but we have a lot of rules placed by industry as far as how long you can use something. It's interesting. Things like fire engines. I saw a comment on social media about, well, they say they need new fire engines, but how many years old are they, and how, what's the odometer say? And it would be wonderful if we could do that. But the state of Washington, the way that your homeowners and business insurance is determined is by an institute called Washington Survey and Rating Bureau. And that group gives each fire district a number. Their number is based on a rating that's done every 5 years. And they don't care how many miles are on anything or how many hours the engine has running. If it's 20 years old, it gets you no points. So You know, if we have a ladder truck that's 20 years old and it works, they don't care. They just give us a goose egg. And what happens is we get the goose egg and you get the raise in your insurance rates. So I'm discovering my life was easier when I just responded to emergencies. That there's all these things that go into determining what we need to function now and in the future. So I'll get back to the levy rate. We're asking to raise it to $1.45. And what does this provide? It provides, most importantly, the equipment and apparatus and the operational equipment we need to function to do our job day to day. One of the other things that this levy rate increase would provide is 4 battalion chiefs. We discovered people hear the word chief and they think, why do you need more chiefs? No more administrators. I agree. Battalion chiefs is a weird word used by the fire service. These are firefighters that work in the field on shift, but they are the highest level of supervision in the field, who also can add to the crew. So one of those weird mandates I was talking about, if you go to a house that's on fire and you are on a fire engine and there's 3 of you, you can't do anything until there's 4. It's just
Can't go inside.
Can't go inside for safety. Can't go inside. Can't go inside and put it out. Even if you can see through the window, you can spray water through the window, but if you can't see it, you can't do anything. Battalion chief gives us 4 on scene almost immediately anywhere in the district. You know, as quick as driving time for an SUV versus a 17-ton fire engine. We can intervene quicker on these calls. Gives us higher level supervision at things like the Custer train derailment. You know, that was definitely, hopefully that's a once in a career response for me. I hope to never have to go to something like that again. It was super nerve wracking as you're seeing this giant column of black, but it gives us that immediate on scene supervision. It also provides for the hiring of 4 additional firefighters that would staff a peak hours transport unit, which would actually be stationed at the semi-auto station. That part of the study that the commissioners had done in 2019 and early 2020 was looking at the overall operation, our call volume increase, and are our units even stationed in the correct place? Are we spending our money in the right place? And one of the things it showed was we have about 35% of the time, the station in Blaine and the station in Birch Bay are out of service. They're dealing with calls at the exact same time. So there's the next reliable fire coverage or aid call coverage comes from either Ferndale, Linden, or Laurel, which that's a drive, right? Now we are creative and we do move units up to halfway between Linden and I-5, kind of in the Delta area, but inevitably Murphy's Law enacts and they end up getting sucked right back. It's just the way it goes. So by putting this peak hour unit on, it would be on from 8 in the morning till 8 at night to start with. That's just to start with at the Semiahmoo station, because our study shows that that's when these guys are getting double hammered. That's when both units in Blaine and Birch Bay are out. So we need to provide backup. And Semiahmoo is a growing community. You look around here, it doesn't take you long to figure out that this area is growing. I do know that has been by past chiefs, that has been whether promised or insinuated in the past, that's going to be stationed. And I can't speak to that other than to tell you that I'm now on Zoom, probably being recorded. You're welcome to hold me accountable. And I'm telling you that as the fire chief, I'm going to do that sitting next to my boss. And so if we don't do that, come to the fire commission, come to the board meetings, hold me accountable, and then you can hold him accountable to the ballot box. I can't think of any better way to put that olive branch out that I know promises have been broken, but you have all the people that are the decision makers are right here. And so that is what we're going to do with the raise in rates. It's not just to fund the current operation, but it's to actually expand the operation and get us closer to the service we'd like to provide. And what are some of the things that we've done in the past to kind of, stretch this thing out. I said, it's been 12 years since we've increased or asked for an increase. And as I go around and talk to groups, one of the things a story I want to tell you is that the firefighters have taken zeros for wage increases, and even in a couple of years, given money back when pink slips were given out to keep the service as it has been. So we can't balance this on our firefighters' backs anymore. I know it's an easy target, and it's easy to pop that off on social media, but they have helped us. They've helped the district by like I said, taking zeros or even giving money back out of their own raises. So the guys and gals that work have really, they believe in the operation, they believe in what they're doing, and they want it to get better. They want to offer more service. So I have a hint that's really, Mr. Nats, I don't know if you've got anything more.
Well, we can certainly answer questions, but
Yes.
I think it's, the bottom line is if we don't pass this levy, we're not gonna be able to function. That's the bottom line. And people say, well, what happens if it doesn't pass? And we've talked about this. We have spent a lot of money analyzing our financial situation. We've hired experts in the field, and it's $1.45. We'll get us through 6 years. We'll fund all our apparatus, all our personnel, everything we need to do. Won't build a new fire station, but it will, paint the existing ones and fix the water heater or whatever else breaks. But we'll come back in November and we will ask for $1.45. We are not going to do like some jurisdictions or other organizations who say, let's ask for 10 million. And if it doesn't pass, we'll ask for 5 million. We need $1.45, and that's where we're at. So we're hoping that we get that support. We believe we've been honest and transparent, and we've got good people here. I've been here 5 years as a commissioner, and I'm finally looking forward to seeing that we have a plan and we are implementing it and we are moving forward and we are staffing this station up here. I don't know if you guys have watched, but we did. Someone called us and said, boy, that station is looking really crappy up here. And we organized a work party. We had 17 of our people and commissioners and family members come out and spent 8 hours out there cutting and pruning and trimming and pressure washing and getting that ready for the passage, hopefully, of the levee lid lift so that we can put an 8 car there. So we're committed to this. So we'd be happy to answer your questions.
I'm just curious, what's the status of the apparatus in that station right now?
Currently, that is the Whatcom County Fire Safety House.
There's
So
a truck in there.
there is, it's an older engine that we would not use on a fire just because your closest fire engine is station 63, which is on Birchfield Lane Road. So, yes.
I asked you this question earlier, but everybody, I don't think heard the answer, and that was, it'll be wonderful to have people up here, but I asked you about emergency services and the percentages of, what is the
Right.
incidence of fire, et cetera, up here?
So I don't have specifically for the semi-auto area, but we run about 80% EMS calls, 10% what I would call service other or rescue, and 10% fire, whether it's alarms or actual structure fires. So it's, we do mostly EMS. That is particularly what we do. And I'm sure that it's kind of been a hot topic with, some of the mandates that law enforcement's facing and some of those things. We are seeing our call volumes go up because we are responding to calls that we've never responded to before. So we are kind of the catch-all. That is probably going to end up costing us more in training and some other things like that. But it is what it is. The fire service has taken on jobs that we weren't specifically notified for its entire history. I mean, as long as there's been a fire service, we've taken on things that we you know, we learn to love or we learn to get good at. So
Jeff, did you have a-
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, you said you put an aid car here.
yes, sir.
That means an ambulance, right?
Yes, sir. An ambulance.
And if someone in Semiahmoo needed an ambulance, it wouldn't come from the other station, it'd come from this one.
It would come initially from this one. Yes. Yep.
And then you replace the old truck, as I call them in my
That's-
jargon, with a newer one.
Yeah, you would see a pretty close to brand new ambulance in that station.
We have a lot of green belts around here that are pretty dry right now and probably not going to get any rain throughout the summer. What kind of a response you have if there's a fire breaks out? Say we get a lightning or maybe an electrical fire or something that gets started in this big piece of property out here. What kind of response do you guys have for something like that?
So one of the neat things in the county right now is that a lot of the fire chiefs are turning over. What we're doing is we're dropping the walls between departments. We have probably the most robust automatic aid agreements between districts all over the western side of the county that we've ever had. I think there's old fire chiefs rolling in their graves because they used to be like, yeah, they're almost a kingdom. So you do not cross this road. And thus younger guys that would sit there in frustration and be told, no, you can't cross the road, and have thought that was idiotic for years, are now in charge. And we're like, well, first thing we're doing is we're taking the borders away. So we may still have taxing borders, but so you ask what we do, you would see units from Ferndale and Linden and Bellingham and District 4, you know, DNR. We have one of those dropping walls kind of things. Shortly after I became the chief, DNR, Department of Natural Resources, said, hey, we have a hard time finding a spot to park our engine in the winter. I'm like, come on in. But so they park their engines in the winter, which means now they park there in the summer. So we have DNR engines, not officially stationed at our stations, but they start and end their days. And so when they come back for callbacks, they're coming to our stations to come out. This spring, for the first time in my fire service career, I saw an airdrop down on Mount Baker Highway. We had a big wildfire down there, and yeah, it turns out there's a helicopter about 25 minutes away from Whatcom County, just right down in Arlington. So we do have a significant, robust. It does take time to get the wheels turning. So it may not look like things are happening immediately, but there is a huge machine, especially in these what we call wildland urban interface. All the fire chiefs recognize that is a nightmare we do not want to deal with. That's not just Semiahmoo. I know that's what we're talking about today, but that's areas in Ferndale, that's, in eastern Linden, that's a problem. It's really all over as sprawl has happened. It's definitely something that keeps us awake.
Just anecdotally. So I joined the fire service in 1978 and spent 30 years in Bellevue before I retired and came up here, and then got coerced into becoming a fire commissioner. But one of the first things I noticed was the Semiahmoo community all had shake roofs. And if you guys have a wildland fire, it's going to be ugly. I'm sorry. Shake roofs are, wood roofs are bad for the fire service. If you've looked at any of the California fires, Oregon, or anywhere, I've been to Spokane, I've been to Oregon, I've been to California after these fires have happened, and the houses that are still there either have metal or have anything with a wood roof is gone. And that's because the embers fly and they land on your roof. So sorry. Bad news. I think you guys have changed some of your rules about that, and people who are replacing their roofs are going with that presidential roofing, which is a really, really helpful thing for the fire service to help prevent the spread of big fires like that.
Bill?
So the increase of $1.15 to $1.45 is a 26% increase. Now, is that going to be a permanent rate every year?
No, it
Depending
will.
on the taxes?
It will immediately start to degrade as assessed valuations go up. So I'm sorry, I didn't bring my notes. I've got a hand scrawled note at my desk that it shows year after year what our levy rate has done. And if you were So looking at the early 2000s, or mid 2000s, it stayed pretty steady because there was not a big increase in value in assessed valuation. But I would say since about 2016, it started dropping, you know, $1.40, $1.32, $1.28, $1.06, $1.17, $1.15. So it does start to degrade immediately. I shouldn't say degrade, it starts to go down because we can only take that 1%. So your assessed valuation is done, it will be recalculated at $1.45. And the next year when the commissioners approve the budget, it can only be 1% more than it was the year that the year.
Also, with the roll rate of your assessed value or of your property taxes you pay, if the prop taxes go up by more than 1% as a default, then the fire would be a smaller roll
It's
rate.
kept.
So
Correct.
it's not going to be 1.45% of what it is all the time
No,
as a
sir.
constant rate. It just, okay.
And that is actually an option in the state of Washington that a government could do. You can ask for to continually keep the rate at $1.45 for say 6 years, and you can even do an inflator over the 1%. So we can, you know, you could say, and I think there are actually levies on the ballot in Whatcom County that say that, where they're, you know, we want to take we would like $1.45. We're asking for $1.45 plus 4% every year. And we felt like that wasn't transparent, that we need to earn the trust of the citizens back by stating, no, we're going to go this one time, and then it's going to force us to come back to you and say, this is what we did with the money. And here's what we're asking you to raise it to this 6 years from now. So
We're allowed by statute to ask for $1.50. That's the maximum we can ask for. And when we started this process, a lot of people said, well, why aren't you asking for $1.50? Well, because we looked at the numbers, we sharpened our pencils, we went out 6 years, and we even decide, should we keep it at $1.45 or should we let it run its course? And that's why we have this 6-year plan. The end of 6 years will probably be somewhere around $1.30. Assuming that assessed value continues to go the way it does. And we've built our budget for 6 years to use that and accept that and not just say, well, if we can get $1.50, let's take $1.50 and we'll put money in the closet for a while. We're not doing that. We're telling you what it's going to cost to run it, and we're not going to ask you for a penny more than what our budget predictions are. And you can look at, I mean, we've got an Excel spreadsheet that has fire trucks to toilet paper on it, and
Hallelujah.
Let's have one last question, and then I think we need to get on.
Sure, yeah.
So, John, you had a question?
Yeah, thank you. I really enjoyed your presentation. Thank you very much. Based on the current tax base and the 30 cents per thousand, how much additional revenue does that bring?
you know what, Mike, could you give me your email address and I will get back to you on that. Was that a fair trade?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Here, I'll
Thank you guys for coming.
I'll tell you what, I'll give you my business card. If you would email me your question, I will. Yeah. I see that we had some information passed out. Just another kind of piece of, hopefully what you see is transparency. I'm giving you our talking points that we gave out to internal stakeholders, the commissioners, myself, some of the other company officers, so that you could see that there's this is kind of an internal document, and there's nothing to hide.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Bruce, when did you move north?
When? I bought a house in '09, interestingly, right during the economic downturn. Thought I was gonna work for 4 more years in Bellevue and put my house on the market in 2012, and it sold in 1 day. So I moved up here and commuted to Bellevue for a year. About 9 months is all I could take, and then I retired and moved up here permanently.
So you've been here since about what?
2012, permanently, yeah. And I live on Birch Bay Drive, at Deer Trail, so,
May I ask a question about the process of this elect or the vote? So in August, when we vote, one way or another, as you were mentioning in November, we promise, does something happen in August and then if
No.
it passes or fails, then it goes again in November, or is this?
The state of Washington in its infinite wisdom, election day is August 3rd. Filing day for the November ballot is also August 3rd. So if we don't know if it fails, the day the filing for November closes, so we have to file for November.
Without
The day-
Oh,
So we won't.
pass or fail, we have to file.
We have to pass or fail, we have to file again on the same day that people vote. So we're hoping that it passes, but we're preparing for if it doesn't.
so if it passes in August, you don't have to worry about it in
Correct.
November?
No, we'll pull it,
But
we'll
if
get
it fails in August, it'll be
Then it'll-
there for November
it'll be
anyway.
there on the ballot for November.
Okay, thank you.
And if by chance it doesn't, then we'll certainly do an extensive question and answer as to what people thought and why
Yeah.
they didn't like what we were proposing. But truly, the bottom line truth is, that's what we need.
Because one of the things, being a board with residents, they've said many times, since I've been on the board, which isn't that long, if you increase it by 5% per year, so did individual ones or some random small number, it's easy to get away with. When you start jacking it to a big number, all of a sudden people, what the hell? What
Right.
the cost of inflation or the cost of living isn't increasing by 5%, not even 10%. You're asking for 26%. So
One of the other interesting things I've learned is that just putting it on the ballot and having people vote on it costs the fire district about $50,000. So by doing it year after year, it's $50,000 that could we put that towards something
what
else.
could it be voted for in a way that it's 5% this year, another 5% next year, and then for a 6-year plan based on, I'm just saying theoretically to avoid something like that. But anyway, I appreciate you guys.
The plan this time is if we pass it, we haven't asked for 12 years. We've got some new people here who said that's ridiculous. For your very reasons, is like people are going like, why so much, right? We get through the 6 years and we'll be back. I mean, that's the future.
I think one of your big selling points is we have not asked you for 12 years. So it's time to play catch up.
It is unfortunately, and that's, that's where we're at. So like I said, we looked at the numbers, we needed a plan, and this is moving forward.
I appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Definitely critical services.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Oh, one other thing, if I could, you just triggered something. And this is how we get revenue. We don't get a check from the county. When you're talking about local government, this is, your money doesn't go to Olympia, it doesn't go to Bellingham, it doesn't go to DC, and nobody takes a cut. This comes to the fire district. And if you want to see your fire engine, come down and pound on the door, the guys will roll it up and take a picture of it. This is truly local. You're funding your local agency.
So random question, I get a whole bunch of just calls, marketing calls, cold calls. Hey, we're raising money for the fire and for police and for this and that. So pertaining to fire, is any of that kind of stuff
No, sir.
local? Or is it all just a bunch of BS crap?
That is a scam, and I would encourage anyone to just hang up and make a response.
Block, I do all the time, but it's like, well, maybe they do need it, but it feels like that's not the
This
right
is
way
it
to do
for
it.
us.
Okay.
That's how we do
Thank you.
business. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Okay, the resort report will not occur today. Nicole had a conflict, and so our next meeting is going to be August 19th at 4:00, right here. We'll do it the same way. All right, is there a motion to approve minutes from the last meeting? Thank you, Kate. Is there a second? John? We'll put John down on that one. Any comments, changes, Steve?
In number 12, the discussion about the potential exchange of land with the smoke developer, it just isn't clear that that's what's being discussed. And if this is the record of what we're doing. Just something that says that the offer from the Seaspoke developer to transfer the ownership of tract D or something would make it clearer what that's about.
Yeah, I don't really say
Yeah.
that.
You're right.
Good catch.
So how should we handle this? Just that will be clarified?
Yeah, just the topic of the discussion.
Yeah.
Should be-
So Debbie, can you have Justine clarify that, and we can maybe pass it around just to make sure that we're comfortable with clarification, and then reinsert it in the minutes. So can we pass with that change then?
I will go ahead and do that, Doug.
Thank you, Justine. All right, all in favor? Any opposition? Okay, great. Let's move right to member open forum. Lori, do we have anybody that has asked to speak?
You have two individuals that have asked to speak, so you may want to go ahead and review the rules.
Tracy, can you give the quick notes on?
Indeed, we just, if you're the first time trying to approach or have a questions to the board, just be cordial, please. As we always try to limit and be efficient in our time, we just try to limit to 3 minutes. Again, if you would like to cede your time for somebody else, you can do that. But we just try to keep it professional and kind, but not offense to anybody directly on the board or anybody else. With that having said, I believe everything else is pretty straightforward.
Thank you. And Lori, who is first up then?
That would be Carrie Clevenger.
Hi, Carrie, welcome.
Thank you. Should I start?
You bet.
Okay, I just wanted to recount my experience working with the ASC as a member of the community and building a house. We found that the ASC's committee's approach has been an ever-changing kaleidoscope of moving goalposts, misinformation, and a lack of adherence to their stated objectives. In December of 2020, we approached the board with the express need to build landscape walls to create a terraced look on our slope lot during the excavation process. We were told by the ASC that we would need to submit a complete landscape plan, which we did. We were told in February that we were approved. In April, after building our first landscape wall, we were informed that we were out of compliance and that our landscape plan was not approved, that they had only approved our material. This was extremely confusing to us because the approval of the material had not been our question. We had already spent thousands of dollars on material and countless hours of labor. Furthermore, what could a person do with material approval for a project that isn't approved? It did not make sense to us. So we were requested and submitted a second landscape plan in April, at which point they stated that we could only build a landscape wall of natural stone rather than landscape wall block they had previously stated they had approved. At that time, they also requested more detail about our walls, even though the ASC charter says that they're not here to enforce codes or rules or regulations. And these were less than 4-foot retaining landscape walls, which are not part of city code. Subsequently, we met with 2 committee members in May to discuss the committee's requirement that we get a geologist to state the landscape wall did not have to be connected to the storm drain. At that time, the 2 members agreed that if the city was okay with our wall, then the committee would not continue its burdensome requirement to require for us to pay for an inspection. So we submitted our third landscape plan, deleting the wall in Night Heron, which is the wall they didn't want since we couldn't afford the natural stone they wanted. We answered further questions about the landscape walls, but they said we still needed a geologist to inspect our wall. So our third plan was also not approved. We have had material sitting in the street for 5 months now. In any case, we can't find a reasonable solution. We've even offered to connect to the storm drain, but we're told we can't do that either. No other homeowners are being asked to pay for their own inspections to build landscape walls. We think that the ASC has misinterpreted the building permit from the city, which says that they are to coordinate with the contractor to inspect the stormwater drain connection as to mean all landscape walls when it is our understanding that they are referring to the main stormwater drain connection for all the house drainage that is already in place and could be inspected. It is against the charter of the ASC to basically act as code enforcement on behalf of the city and then expect us to get our own inspections. We already paid for inspection fees through our permit. Why should we have to get every landscape wall individually inspected at our own cost? Finally, our job site was robbed last weekend for about $1,000 worth of materials
Harry,
and tools.
30 seconds.
Okay, we pay our dues for a gated community to the SRA. So we feel the SRA bears some responsibility for that loss, as Drayton Hillside has not been gated for weeks. The building process has been very stressful for us, but dealing with the ASC has been by far the worst part. I thank you all for your time and really hope that you can help us.
Steve, is there any response that should go back to Carrie right
I
away?
don't think there's any clarifying question that I have,
Okay.
which is all I'm supposed to do with this meeting.
So, Carrie, I assume that the AFC will be in touch with you to follow up and see if we can't work, make sure that things are settled.
I really, really appreciate that because this has been horrible for us.
I can hear that. Thank you, Carrie, for letting us know.
Thank you.
Next, Lori.
That would be April Hashimoto.
Hello, April.
Hello, everybody. You guys all look so close together. Okay, I have some questions about maintenance. I'll just list my questions and then you guys can decide if you want to answer them or you want to defer them to getting back to me another time. My first question is what the status is of the maintenance plan. I've been dialing in and listening to these board meetings, and I believe that since around the April board meeting, the maintenance plan is something that keeps getting introduced and talked about, but isn't ready yet. And now it's July. I think everybody who lives in the community is very interested and invested in maintenance. My second question is about the outsourced landscaping that I read about and then saw happen in the community. I believe that would have been an unbudgeted expense because I'm actually pretty familiar with the 2021 budget. So I am wondering what the approval process was to spend the money on an unbudgeted item in 2021, which I believe was in the ballpark of around $15,000. And my last question is about priorities in maintenance. Since we don't have a maintenance plan that I can look at, my superficial observation is that since this landscaping work was outsourced and since the street sweeping was outsourced, and I understand we've been fully staffed on maintenance from January to May, what are the top 4 or 5 activities in terms of time that the maintenance staff has been consumed by this year? That's it.
I guess, Bruce, do you want to respond now, or would you like to respond back in correspondence?
There, I'm unmuted. I could try to respond now, but probably correspondence could be more detailed. By the way, April, I'd be more than glad to meet with you and talk with you also.
Okay, so is there a maintenance plan? Has the maintenance plan been completed?
It's 40% complete. The big issues have been trying just to identify what we're responsible for.
So is there an estimated date that there will be a maintenance plan that will be available to the community?
No, I don't have a date on that. I'm still, like, just an example, last 2 weeks, I found out the details on the bioswale on Hillside. That was something that I was unable to find until just a couple of weeks ago.
I might suggest
Okay.
Eve
What
falls
about,
in.
what about just, if people don't mind, just like the top 4 or 5 priorities in maintenance?
Right now, it's water.
Before we go to the next, I just think that it's probably your questions, I think we can articulate back to you. Because I think that when Bruce says the maintenance plan is 40% complete, that maintenance plan is going to be done prior to completing our budget.
Yeah,
And making sure that those assumptions that we have for 2020 are in place. The maintenance plan for this year has been a bit of a moving target. And so what I think we want to do is take some time to articulate back a response to you that is well thought out and gets to the answers that you are looking for.
yeah,
Is that
no, I
okay?
agree. I agree. I think that in terms, and that's one of the reasons I'm asking about the amount that was spent on the outsourcing of landscaping, because that was not budgeted, and I guess it wasn't in a maintenance plan. So I'm just trying to figure out how the planning for maintenance and the spending on maintenance and the staffing for maintenance is all kind of tying together in 2021 before we do 2022. But I'm happy to have somebody send an email back to me. I think it's information that everyone in the community would be interested in hearing.
Sure.
I don't think it's like specific to me. I think there's quite a few people, if you guys want to put it into one of the communications, I think there's quite a few people in the community who would be interested in what the maintenance priorities are.
Yeah, and I think that also the town halls, when we are ready in August for our budgeting cycle, will be very informative as it relates to that, because there's going to be a lot of focus on maintenance.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, April. Any others, Lori?
No, I do not have anybody else that has signed up to speak.
Okay, thanks, Carrie and April, for your thoughts. We appreciate it.
Would the maintenance report is it will be included in the meeting if people are still listening?
Well, that's a good point. April, Helen just mentioned that the maintenance report is incorporated into the agenda today, so there will be an update there.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Debbie.
Okay, first on my report is the 2020 audit, and I checked with the auditors and they said they're getting close. They asked for a little bit additional information, and so I'm working with Joe as the interim accounting manager on that. Next is the Carnegie bioswale, and staff will be meeting with I&I Piping to determine the extent of the damages and what the focus of repairs will be. And then the maintenance report. First, again, is the maintenance work plan, as was mentioned, that is 40% complete. And Bruce mentioned the Drayton Hillside bioswale stormwater maintenance plan, and then inspections and so on. And then he's continuing to specify which locations need automated irrigation systems. And the SRA sweeper is ready to go to sweep the streets on Monday and Tuesday, the 26th and 27th. I asked that a test be done today to ensure that that would take place, and that was successful. And I just mentioned the bioswale, and we're also looking at the annual report that's required for the Drayton Hillside bioswale. Bruce has met with someone, and we're looking to the end of July to get that report, what that will entail. And then the entry sign 5-year plan is working draft in the 22 maintenance budget. And then we're looking to use treated wood posts in the concept of the replacement plan. Bruce has purchased a post and is going to be doing a test on that. On the entry automated gate plan, that's 99% complete and ready to be presented to the maintenance committee. And the operations budget for 2022 has been generated and is ready for the maintenance committee. And so we'll be working with the maintenance committee, with finance, and with the board on that. And then we have, we'll be looking to find someone for a professional road evaluation. And that will go into a 5-year replacement plan. And we have a questionnaire that's been asked for by the research study company. And so that's a work in progress. And then.
When do we anticipate having that reserve study completed?
Joe, can you help me?
Very
with it?
soon, but it is so top level, it doesn't mean anything. It's, what are we paying, $450 or something like that for just a bunch of information that we're giving that they're grind out? It's trivial information to use for anything.
We're gonna have to deal with that issue before the AGM.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they just,
Oh, absolutely. Whether it's a formal reserve study or whether we're looking at our whole community with, which is what we're doing, and the condition of all of our assets and determining what do we need to do over the next 1, 3, 5 years. That is absolutely mandatory that happen in the next month or two.
So how are we working with our reserve study folks to get to a point where that reserve study is a reflection of what our future looks like?
Again, what they've asked us for is our numbers. And I think that earlier in the year it was said that, you know, we weren't impressed with what we received last year. So I think it's a conversation with them to say that we need, as Bruce pointed out, more high level looking at the assets that we have and giving us a true estimate of the repairs. John?
Thank you. I don't know a lot about how reserve studies, I've never participated in one, but my understanding is that 3A is more or less just dusting off an old one and doing very minor revisions to it. So that would seem to be completely inadequate for our current state of affairs. When was the last time a complete level 1 reserve study was done?
It was
And
last year.
But it's one of those things, garbage in equals garbage out. And from discussions we've had over the last couple of months, there's been garbage going into the system to pump garbage coming out. Like the cost of roads, as a very simple example, which we've exhausted over time.
it would also seem to me that if we don't know what our real assets are, as Bruce has said over and over again, the reserve study is just as flawed.
Well, the thing that concerns me is we had a discussion in April and we had a discussion in May, and we anticipated having that reserve study updated at an acceptable level by the end of June. And it's my understanding we don't even have that reserve study underway, that update underway yet. So that's the concern that I have, is that we're not getting this stuff done yet.
so I agree. I recall conversations that we were going to get a much better reserve study done.
Exactly.
And we haven't. And now it's going to be very difficult to get in line to get your fancy reserve study done, because I'm sure every HOA across the country is going after the best reserve study people for the most intensive review they can get. So we really need to get on it.
Who's responsible for actually setting this up so we can get it done? Is it the executive director? Is it Debbie? Is it you?
I've been
With the
working.
finance
Pass it on to me.
in terms,
I
It's
for
passed on to me.
the numbers. Yes.
But in terms of getting the information which is necessary, and I mean, Bruce mentioned the Drayton Harbor, it took him a long time to actually find the documents that said what the situation was. And then there was this, where is it, the William Rex Park? Is that the place where there are all those sprinklers that have not been working for years and years and years? So all of those things have to be identified in order for the numbers to even be.
And that's not what this study is attempting to, not even close to what
yeah,
this.
this is the apples and oranges.
But that's what we need to have if we're going to have that 5-year.
We have to do that internally.
Well, I think, yeah, the internal development of a good long-range plan by our staff that know our facilities and our assets well is going to serve us better than a long-range plan. Long-range plan is really a requirement that the state has for HOAs. And so I think we have to do it. And I think it's important that we get that get in step with that company that's doing that so that we have good information. But at the same time, I think we have to rely on our internal planning and our staff.
That's what I was really trying to say. We could, but because we don't know the complete complexity of all the assets, and it appears that it's taking a lot longer to get that information than we thought.
I was just going to point out that repairing things like sprinkler heads is not funded from a reserve fund. That's operational. So there's a clear distinction between infrastructure, if you will, and operational doodads.
Exactly.
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt, but continue.
No, I hear that loud and clear. That is a huge priority.
Yeah, that's on me.
Okay. And then we are still short in the maintenance department and seeking to fill at least one position, if not two, with more specified skills that are needed other than raking leaves and such. That's what I have for the maintenance report.
Steve?
No question. The drain hillside bioswales mentioned a couple of times in today's materials. Which one is it? Because there's a drain hillside 1 bioswale and drain hillside 2 bioswale.
Drayton Hillside 2.
Okay, we just, again, for the record.
Yes, Drayton Hillside 2.
Keeping them straight.
Down by the path.
Yes, that's correct.
I have a question. Do we have a preventative maintenance protocol in place for maintaining our bioswales?
There is a repair and maintenance manual for that. Yes, it needs to be trimmed, it needs to be observed and such. And Bruce, I believe you do have a copy of that.
And have we been maintaining our bioswales on a regular annual basis?
Well, part of Bruce's arrival, yes, they were. And Bruce, can you answer if anyone from the crew has been down to do any maintenance on the bioswale?
I'm sorry, I just was trying to unmute. Could you repeat that again, please?
Has anyone on the SRA staff done any maintenance on the bioswale in this current season?
Yes, we've actually gone down during the winter time, removed the branches and such. We did do the weed whacking on top of it. Where we're at right now is actually trying to get the annual report on it ready so that it can go to the board and to the city. And then I'm finding out there's a lot more, I'll say, routine maintenance that needs to be done now that I've found the report.
Yep.
So 2 things. One, first, Bruce just said that the maintenance plan is 40% complete. I don't understand what is the bottleneck that is prohibiting us from actually finishing a draft of the maintenance plan that we seem to, as April said, be talking about at every meeting.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't seem to me to be something that's super complicated. I know you're shorthanded, Bruce. I know there are a lot of things going on, but this is a priority. And so I just don't understand why it's only 40% complete. Second thing is, in your presentation, Debbie, you mentioned about the signs. And I'm reading the board packet, it said we made a decision already to go with treated wood. And I thought that was a board discussion, or should be a board discussion or board review, because I had understood we were going to look at different options. This Trex type material or pipe or something. And I would think that we would have a discussion about that before a decision was taken, across Semiahmoo as to how we're going to do our signs. Maybe I misunderstood.
No, I was surprised by that too, John.
My understanding in discussing this with Bruce, and Bruce can chime in if he wants to, but there's been no decision made other than to buy one of these posts, which is pressure treated, and to see if we can get paint to stick on it and make it look and feel like the old posts that last just a few years. There's no decision. It's before a real proposal can be made. Bruce needs to finish this proof of concept and see if it's a viable choice.
And he
would
does
be the
have,
most
the- he does have, I just signed the check
He
for the
just
post.
got the post.
So
Well, I would just think you would do a cost estimate of the different materials and then see, length of life expectancy of that material and the cost and so on. And then make a presentation before starting to buy one of this and one of that and testing different things. That's the way I would have understood it to be.
Bruce?
Sure. Let's address the post first. You're absolutely right. We need to get a cost estimate before we really talk about it. And that's the first step in getting the wood. It's the cheapest, it's local, it'll last 30 years. So it was the first thing I could go after. The second thing is we go to the pipe. Somebody has to come up with a design. We just can't give an estimate off of a guess. So that has to be designed. That takes time, and I'm not an expert in metallurgy, doing a design. Concrete, I can tell you it's going to be very expensive, but once again, it needs to be designed. It has to have rebar inside of it. What's the configuration of the asphalt or concrete going to look like? So I was asked to put a 5-year plan together to do the replacement as part of the 2022 budget. That's where I'm trying to reach right now, is at least twice give some semblance of cost that you can expect if we went with poles.
Okay, I appreciate that, Bruce, but the board of directors are also not the people who are metallurgists and wood crafters. So I don't know the first thing about it. And the reason we have a maintenance manager is to have that done. And if you can't do it, then you need to go to the maintenance committee and you need to find the right resources to help you come up with that concept. The other thing is we need to have.
I agree with that. I agree with that. But let's just, I don't want to get in an argument there. I was explaining where I'm at.
No argument. And I think the other thing, Doug, we need to do as a board is we need to set deadlines. And we need to have firm deadlines that we say not, 40% complete, but we say on July 30th, this needs to be done in a draft and needs to be circulated. Otherwise, we're never going to get
all of
forward.
this would be done in June. I think we're pretty clear that we wanted this all done in June. So. All right. You're done? All right.
So can we fix a date for the maintenance plan?
You want me to address that?
Bruce.
Okay. One of the things I found when I came here, there was absolutely no documentation on what SRA was responsible for, let alone on a maintenance plan, let alone a procedure for doing work. So you just don't throw that together. And that's been actually, since I've been here, it's been a process of discovery. I call it mining data. And then the other way to approach this is, why is this stuff so bad condition? I've approached that, and we'll talk about it in the budget. This has not been something that's just been pushed off. And I'm not going to get too far down the line, but right now I'm putting 55 hours a week on this stuff. If you want to push it further, that's fine. I'll be glad to work the overtime to get it there.
Okay, Joe, treasurer's report.
The financial statements, it's only 4 pages. The one page I removed from past board packages is the comparative 5-year from 17 through 21. I don't know if you've looked at it, if you have any questions. There is nothing out of the ordinary that's different than it was in the past. We've got June actuals to date against the June plan to date. And then we have an estimate for the year. The one thing, which is the bigger sheet with quarters, the one thing I will state, there's been a couple things come up in the last few days since I completed this that have not been represented in this that could impact us negatively. One of them is the bioswale for Carnoustie, which is not looking pretty at this moment in time, nor do we understand what the potential liability is going to be for it to get us out of the arrangement that has been made.
No, but what do you mean it's not looking pretty? Because I thought we'd agreed and there was a contractor and all the work was going to be done and we were all moving forward and everything.
So the contractor, so are you aware of the numbers that are out there right now? So we were given $32,500 by the owner. The current estimate all in is higher than $90,000 right now.
Yeah, I think it's important that we don't focus on a $90 number right now, because what we're doing is working to determine what has to be repaired. And we believe that the numbers that have come back is to basically rebuild the entire bioswale.
Well, we don't know. That's just
We
numbers.
just don't know. So and so that's what Bruce has been doing today, met with someone that has, if there's, first of all, broken pipes, because that could have been the reason why the water was draining. And then the other thing is, I think they know about where in the bioswale the leak was. And so they're going to try and figure out if there's a way to fix that section, because we're required to repair it. We're not required to rebuild it. So we have to repair it. So we're trying to figure out what that scope is actually going to be. So.
Well, I'm just letting you know that, and if it's an excess, that is not represented anywhere in this budget for the rest of the year. We're hoping, I'm not going to use the word anticipating, but hoping that it's going to be significantly or closer to in line with the amount of money that we received from the owner or previous Jason Ragsdale from the previous owner, wasn't it?
It was a combination of Semiamu LLC, which was the lender that was foreclosed, that received that back. And Ragsdale.
So it's my understanding that number was based on an actual review of the bioswale and a statement, an engineering statement of what needed to be done.
Correct.
And what I'm hearing is that nobody's willing to do that. They're asking to redo the entire evaluation.
That's correct.
When we can't find anybody who will just come in and do the specified work?
Well, there's not a scope of work that the engineers have created. The engineers have, and Bruce, correct me if I'm wrong, but the engineers have not identified where the problem is, correct?
You're muted.
You're muted, Bruce. Well.
Okay, is that better? Can you hear me now? Yeah, Doug, you're right. There was no identification of the failure, of the point of failure. And that's what we're trying to determine now, is what was the point of failure, so we can just discover how much it's going to cost to fix it.
And Debbie, you worked with Cascade Engineering. What was the instruction to Cascade in order to get that document from them?
I did not work with them directly. That was handed to me after joint partners left.
But the engineering wasn't complete. You worked directly with Cascade to get the engineering completed, correct?
To get the contract, yes, but I didn't have I didn't work on any of the details that led up to that. I didn't have any prior knowledge of that.
And Bruce, the work that Cascade Engineering has done, where was their instruction to bring the project scope of work into definition?
There is no scope of work. There was nothing there other than it's exploratory. I'll use that word. It was exploratory.
What did the engineers for what, $7,000 or $5,000? What did we pay them for?
It looks like we paid them for drawings and where to look for the problem.
You're saying, what are we going to pay them? We haven't paid them yet.
Well,
They have an estimate. And I don't know if all the work's been done. I don't know if it's not been done because they haven't given us a bill. We haven't paid it, but we've got an estimate of what it was going to cost.
well, we have a drawing of the as-built, and we have a new set of engineered drawings. So what do those new engineered drawings tell us? Or did they just make some drawings up?
Okay,
You're looking at me.
I'll try.
I'm asking Bruce.
Doug, I'll try to explain it. With the first set of drawings that we have is how it was built. The second set of drawings we have shows the area that we need to do the exploring and to find out what the cause of the leak was. If you go through it, it's not specific as to where the leak is or specific in how to repair the unknown leak. Does that help?
Well, I guess, you know, this isn't something we need to beleaguer at this meeting. We need to have a follow-up meeting to just make sure that that the engineering is doing its job so that we know where to start working.
Can I just ask a question? It seems to me the engineering, and I'm not an engineer, was, you know, there is a leak. We don't know exactly where it is. But we know there is a point of failure. And that the quote that's come in, this humongous one, appears to be to rebuild the whole thing, not to repair the leak, which is what is our responsibility. Is that reasonably? Thank you. So the bid to do the work is far beyond the scale of the work that was ever anticipated.
Correct.
Potentially, that's.
Well, it's either that or where did this guy get the 30,000? On what
The
basis?
25 grand plus 30%.
Okay, but on what basis was that sum of money? Was that just picked out of the sky, that number? Or was that based on some expectation that the work that needed to be done would cost that much
All
money?
this stuff preceded most of us in the room.
Understood.
And it was determined by the previous group, including joint partners, that the scope of what was needed. And so Cascade came up with a quote, which would include the costs of the materials and the work to do it. And it was in total 25 grand. So we got 30% extra. Now, for the number that Bruce told me last week, which I believe has circulated around, is in the mid-70s of the work. The engineering is somewhere close to 10, and then we've got legal. And now we're starting to incur internal costs associated with it as well, when, you know, we've got other priorities that need to be looked at. So that's why we're in the vicinity of 90. And I've heard that if we get less than 100, I don't know any of this stuff. All I know is we've got 32,000 in a trust account. And
I just think it's inflammatory to be throwing numbers around until we understand specifically what needs to be repaired and what that cost is going to be.
Yes.
Because I think it's inflammatory.
Well,
We just can't talk it.
There's an engineering report on which the estimate was based. We need to start there and find out what kind of soup we're making.
So the other item that would be of significance that might be in addition to this is maintenance of the islands that Bruce said last week is desirable from what he has heard from individuals on the board. April's comment, where did the, you know, close to $15,000 after tax for the gates come from? And I mean, that was the cost, and it was to make it look a lot better. Bruce came up with somewhere around 43,000, if I remember right, to potentially do beautifying on the islands within the community in this year. All of that would be on budget, and all of that is not included in this budget as well. So those are potential negatives depending on what the actions are of this board or the maintenance committee or for recommendations, et cetera.
But to answer the question that April brought up, the approval for doing the kind of just the tune up, the mulch at the front gates and stuff, where did that come from you, Debbie? Or did that come?
It was discussed in this meeting that absolutely we needed to do something. And then a proposal came and I just said, go ahead and do it. We need to get it done. I don't know that I was the sole one who said do it, but it was discussed many times.
Yeah.
So it was added and is included in our numbers right now. And we're still in line with close to a balanced budget with it in it, even though that particular item was on budget.
Didn't it, if I may, didn't it really, a lot of stuff was taken out and then.
Yes, it's been managed, right? It's
Yeah,
just shelved in.
that's right. So,
So I play with some shells.
Yeah, that's what I meant to say. Finance terms are
So if I read the operational part of the budget, it shows that we're about $151,000 ahead of budget. Is that correct?
If you're on the first page, we are 151,000 ahead of budget as of the June actuals. Correct. That is not necessarily indicative of where we're going to be for the end of the year. The end of the year, I think it's my estimate right now, is going to be about $103,000 better than budget by the end of the year, based on information that's come my way.
And that does that include any bioswale additions or no?
There is absolutely nothing related to the bioswale in this set of spending, because it is assumed that 32,000 we got is going to cover the costs of the bioswale.
I just want to make a point on that. I feel strongly that we have to clarify what the work is, and so we know what we want repaired.
Yes.
But if it's 50, I'm picking a number out of the sky, if it's 50,000, we go back to the people that sent us the 32 and say, sorry, 32 is not enough. You need to come up with the rest. This should be not out of pocket for us.
It should not be.
So I don't know what that estimate maybe was based on, some faulty, incomplete, something information. So well, I wouldn't worry about the bioswale in a budgetary sense, because I think we need to press whoever it is, Ragsdale or whatever these people are, to fully pay for it, whether it's 32 or 52 or 102. That's my own opinion on that.
Patricia?
And the last word on this virus of things, anything that is underground, it does take a little bit more time to understand and how to proceed with that. I mean, I am on the business and I understand that it cannot be something lightly taken. And then again, any contractor or anybody else will ask you to rebuild the whole thing. That is for sure. But we don't have to go that route.
So
we have to be diligent on what kind of study is going to be done, and we have to follow very close.
the good news in the process is that Jonathan, I'll probably slaughter the last name, Jonathan Huguet, is a professional engineer, has had a lot of experience in this kind of work. He's a resident in Turnberry Wood, happens to be April's next door neighbor, and he's working with Bruce very closely and the contractor to make sense out of how we approach this, so that we're not just going at it with a shotgun. So
that is a good, that individual is a good example of, we've got all kinds of expertise in our community that hopefully the last period of time shows that we can leverage some of the expertise, and people want to help. Generally, they want to help where they can, especially if there's going to be cost savings to all of us. And we should, rather than just be a board or a committee position, we should see if we can ask people for help when we need it through we have lots of communications. So maybe we need to do it through that. You know, we're looking for somebody who can help with that. If you can, please contact so-and-so and so-and-so and have a discussion.
well, his help is very much appreciated, and I know you all share that appreciation. So
And is he going to go on the maintenance committee then?
he may.
I think that would be really wonderful to have somebody with that expertise on that committee. That's where a lot of these, expertise and backgrounds can be used, whether, and so I think that would be great to get them on the committee.
Yep. Go, Josh.
Regarding this person, I just had a chat with them about being on the maintenance committee. They are a professional engineer registered in 3 provinces of Canada plus the UK, and he is reluctant to become registered here in the US, especially Washington, because of the litigious nature of our society. And he agreed to discuss and give feedback on various issues, but will not be available for ongoing regular maintenance committee meetings. Okay, so.
Yep.
It ties into both the treasurer's report and Debbie's, and it's about these maintenance positions that we have open. I'm just wondering if we've actually reviewed whether or not it makes sense for us to hire 2 new people. I understand that's what we're considering. And whether or not we've looked at the work that they would do, actually outsourcing it, and then doing a cost comparative to see what makes the most sense. Have we done that? Or are we already made the decision that we want to proceed with the 2 people on staff?
Okay.
That's that question.
Did you want me to answer that?
Well, Bruce, I know that you have said you want specific skills to improve the maintenance department. And you have asked that you've looked at outsourcing for the gardening aspect of the maintenance of the community. And so as far as a cost comparison, I'm not sure that you've run numbers on that. So could you help me with that?
Sure. Actual numbers, okay. Right now, I'll give you an example, trying to fill a position. I interviewed a man that was highly qualified. He worked at Intelco. He had heavy equipment experience. And I could go on and on. His minimum acceptance was $24.50 an hour. That was his acceptance. Of course, that's nothing that we're even going to think of meeting. Well, why didn't he accept the job at a cheaper price? He's on unemployment right now and also getting schooling from the state if he desires it. So that's kind of the first to start what the challenge is out there. Now let's go to what you just asked, Debbie. This is not to take anything away from my predecessor. He did a fantastic job, but what you had was one person with knowledge. Okay, and he spent most of his time out there in the field, barely keeping things operating. You had 2 people in support of him that at best you could call gardeners. Look at where you're at right now, dude, and that's what I'm trying to prevent in the future. You need to have a sustained working force that has this historical knowledge and the skills to maintain more than just a garden. So you're going to pay a little bit more for the person, yes. Does that help?
So I have asked, so you all are aware, I've asked Debbie and Bruce as well, that not to fill any maintenance positions until we have people that are in line. I want to be able to work through the justification for each of those in the context of where we're going in our 2022 budget assumptions. Because I want to make sure that we are solid and that we have a very good game plan in place relative to our staffing for 2022. And I've told Debbie that the officers of the corporation need to approve any future hires right now. Jeff?
So I just restate for the board as a whole, because we've had some of these conversations, individual. I think we have to step back from that. And I think what we need to do, the way I envisage it, is we need to think about what are the key things that we need to do in this community. It's not just landscaping, but it's landscaping and it's mowing and whatever all these different fence repair, whatever all these things are. And Bruce, you know them better than I do. And then we have to figure out how best do we approach those and manage those? Do we insource someone? We'd have to get 10 different people because the skill sets are so different. We'd have to have a big group of people. Is it better to outsource it? If we outsource it, what's the cost? And we need to just do a very simple comparative. And I don't think that's so difficult to do. And I think we need to have that sort of view first before we consider, which option we choose. And it's not about what you pay $24 or $18. It's not even at that point. Does that make sense?
That's exactly the point.
I think we need to set a deadline as to when we get that.
Well,
Because
I think our deadline is our budgeting, that getting to our budget, which we're gonna be getting to probably maybe ready for our first town hall should be, I would expect, Joe, what, first week of August, second week of August?
First couple of weeks of August, I'm in Oregon, but I'll be doing some work when I can or when I'm able to. But yes, sooner is better than later. To Bruce's credit, he's got a very detailed 2022 budget with all kinds of very, very detailed line items. And it's hard to look at it other than a couple of line items that are relatively large and say, you know, how do you question this as not being legitimate or not? There's a 2022 budgeting process thing in a second, which includes numbers. The unfortunate thing is this is more than double what the maintenance budget spending is for this year. And the question is going to be, is that the right thing that can we afford? Or do we want to take to the town hall? People have said, a number of people have said in this room, well, you're going to be presenting the budget. And I'm sitting here, I'm not going to be presenting the budget. People are going to be presenting the strategic plan for our community. Budget numbers just roll up based on a strategic plan of what we're going to do with maintenance, what we're going to do internally in administration and so on. And then a budget costs it out. So how the whole rollout is going to be needs to be on a strategic plan by either the staff who own it, of which there's either Debbie or Bruce, or by the various committees who buy into the fact that that's what we want to do, or by the executive team or senior team or whatever you might call it. That is yet to be determined.
But when we get close to having our final budget, I want to make sure that.
We have a budget, we have draft budgets.
But I want to make sure that anybody that wants to be involved on the board and our maintenance committee are involved in going through and really beating up the assumptions so that everybody is comfortable with what those assumptions are. Because, you know, numbers are numbers and you can say a lot of things, but if we don't really understand what the assumptions are that are driving the budget, then we can't really do that job correctly. So we will probably do that before you leave for Oregon, correct?
If we want to do it next week, that's fine, or I'll do it by Zoom, by whatever, while I'm in Oregon.
Okay.
Just a quick question. I mean, I completely agree with the straight planning that you're planning to do. I see it like as a chicken and the egg, right? It's like, yes, I don't know, communications committee would like to present something on a town hall or something, if we're allowed to do that. But we don't know how much, you know, we're able to spend if I don't have the numbers from you.
Well, what we haven't decided to do so far is a top-down approach, which is this is how much we can afford for the entire SRA. This is how much we're going to charge in dues, and as a result, this is how much the dues are going to be. I mean, we haven't done that, and I don't think anybody has proposed that.
No.
So right now, we're doing a bottoms up based on what people think are needs in our community, and I'm not saying they're not needs; they might be needs, but it's rolling up to a much bigger number, somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 15% higher than what our current plan is for this year. And we're not even touching the words.
So we need to do both. We need ground up. We need to know the reality of where we need to be.
Exactly.
And then we're going to have a strategic plan to get there over several years, because we're not going to be able to go, we're going to have to put a reserve increase out there of some amount. And it's going to be based on a lot of fantasy as well, apparently. And we're going to have to increase the operating budget to some extent. The strategic plan is how do we get from what's bearable to what we need in a reasonable series of steps. But we got to get this ground up thing done and get our version, the best version of it we can get at a deadline.
And there are drafts, just to be blunt, there are drafts. Debbie has done up a draft of the administration. Bruce has done up a draft of the entire maintenance side, and they're pretty detailed. So now it's the question of, where do we go from here to say that looks good or it needs work?
Okay, sorry to beat a dead horse, but I just want to be clear. What I understood from what you said, I agree with what I understood, and that is that we have a strategic plan which sets out the key priorities.
Correct.
And from that flows the numbers.
Correct.
Now that, in my head, that fits.
Yes.
So that's where I think we need to be. So and as the board's responsibility, that's what the board is a strategic thinking body. That's what we are. We're strategic. We're not operational. We're strategic. And where we get our strategic input from can be from various sources. But I think the ball rests with the board of directors to get the strategic priorities in place. And then from that flows the budget. Now, you guys presented the town halls before I was even a board member. I was just calling in and listening our strategic plan. And I believe actually, Doug, you were actually doing that 1 year, 3 year, 5 year. So I think we have it. So let's not reinvent the wheel. That work was done. We need to use that as the basis. And if something's not right, then we need to tweak it. But I think that that responsibility rests with this body. So the more we farm it out, I know we want to get input from the community. I'm all about that. But the more dispersed it is, the more difficult it is actually to get our hands around it. And time is fleeting. We need to get this done. So we need to pull this back. And I think we need to look at the strategic plan that was presented to the town hall and then use that as the basis for the generation of the budget.
You know, the one thing I don't.
And I do,
Sorry, go ahead.
thank you very much. Completely concur with you. Yes, and that work was done. And what is now being added to it is that we didn't know that Bruce is uncovering on a whole lot of other areas, you know, whether it's that my little thing, the geotech survey, or, you know, it's Garney, but all the stuff that we didn't know, we now are getting more of that information, which will enable the board to then update, tweak that strategic plan, because the strategic plan has to be built on solid information as well. And then the vision that comes from that.
Can we, Doug, you call a special meeting or discussion or whatever we want, so we focus in on that in the next week?
Yeah, that's what we were talking about, is
next week
getting people together so that we can talk about strategy. Absolutely, but in part of that strategy is understanding what the assumptions are that are underpinning the current opinions about where the money is. Because I've asked Bruce to get numbers for like landscaping, to have landscaping completely contracted out for the entire community, so that we don't have to have people here that are dealing with landscaping that don't know how to deal with landscaping. Okay. And so we can then we can look at that number and compare that to having 2 maintenance guys or 3 maintenance guys. That's the kind of stuff we need to get done in the next 3 weeks.
Short period of time.
I support that. And is there any possibility of getting some copies of those strategic planning documents sent out before that time?
So does anyone have any questions on the couple of pages of financial statements? We've got close to $1 million, $900,000 in cash sitting in our bank account, which is one of the main things we focus on. And that's been about the same all the time. So we're not burning cash. In fact, this month, we're billing out $403,000 in dues that are going to be coming in, most of it in early August, but chunks of it have already come in for people who pay checks. So that'll replenish the bank account. But then, of course, as the year moves through, we deplete it.
Well, and I think it's important to point out, because there are some people listening, that we had an $80,000 increase over anticipated just in revenues. Operation side of revenues. Yeah. So things on the budget are looking much better than they were at the first of the year. And by the end of the year, we're going to manage this to the point where we're going to be in good shape, correct?
It's looking like it, as long as the negative surprises don't rear their heads.
Yeah, bigger
We're
than-
optimists.
Good.
I'm a realist.
So I have a question on page 13, page 1 of the financial
Okay, yeah.
reports. The actuals, middle column, with the blue header there. At the very bottom line.
Yes.
Total SRA surplus or deficit. The actuals show 42,000.
And to the positive as a surplus, yes.
And the prior report said the surplus was 105,000. Same.
Is this in May, are you saying,
I
or?
believe so, if I looked at the right version. And same with the operating, or with the plan, previously showed a $28,000 deficit, and now it's showing a $109,000 deficit. I'm wondering if I'm just reading it wrong, or there's some big deltas here that need some explanation.
So the main reason why that's the case is because, to my point a minute ago, we're in the month of July, we're recording all the revenues that we're collecting as revenue. In every other month, well, I should say in August, we collect some too. In every other month, we're burning. So in the month of June, we didn't collect any money. We're not collecting any HOA dues. So we're burning money in the month of June, in the month of May, in the month of April. So on a cumulative basis, which this financial statement is, it will continue to show a decreased number until we collect more money. So in the month of June, we basically burn. So just looking at the delta between, or the change between May and June, we were at $105,000 surplus. Now we're at 42. We burned a net of $73,000 in the month of June.
So the spending per se didn't jump up that much.
The spending did not jump at all. And that's when you compare to what the plan was for the month, because the plan is going in the same direction.
Thank you.
So do I need to make a motion, or does someone make a motion to accept these financials for the month? Is that what, we haven't done any of that so far in our meeting. So do I need to make a motion to accept the financials for the board?
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to accept into the minutes for this month.
Is there a second?
Second.
Jeff, thank you. All in favor? Any opposition?
So SRA banking, the next set of stuff is just informational. We have moved most of our banking and most of our money into CIT Bank. So now we are actually doing what the board approved us to do as staff back in last year. We're now using CIT Bank. We are working on getting checks. We are still cutting checks out of our one active bank account that's not CIT Bank, and that's at a US bank. Once we get our checks done from CIT Bank, which I'm not holding hope it's going to be in the next week or so, but maybe we'll be moving to doing everything with CIT Bank. One of the main reasons I wanted to do as much moving over into CIT Bank, I'm also, as I've mentioned in the past, talking about a new loan, a replacement loan or a refi. So I've got an updated set of terms. At this moment in time, it's based on whatever the T-bill rate, or sorry, the 10-year treasury rate is going to be. We have a floor, and right now we're at the floor or just under. So it's going to be 4.05% at this moment in time, according to the term sheet. We're currently paying 5% on a mortgage of about $700,000 right now. That equates in the first year or two to around a $7,000, maybe $6,500, whatever savings. But that's over the entire 15-year term, depending on what happens in the last 5 years.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but there is no loan fee.
There was a $750 charge. They initially had an origination fee of 0.5% or something. And because we moved money into the bank, they realized, okay, we're serious about doing banking with them, instead of just talking about doing banking. So they agreed to remove the origination fee. So I think I need to ask for an approval from the board and it's senior, whatever the team of the board, what do you call it, the seniors, whatever staff, someone has to sign on behalf of the association to get a new term loan with CIT. And it's just somebody, it could be Doug, it could be whomever. So do I have to ask for a motion for the board to approve that we go forward with the application, formal application for a new loan?
Yeah, after looking at the documents that we received, I think it wouldn't be in our best interest to do that. So is there a motion?
He's made it.
I'd like to make a motion to.
Second. Thanks, Bill. Any discussion about this? The only thing I want to make sure we do is, as we move forward, let's make sure that we get our documents reviewed by council. I know that most loan documents are pretty much Washington state templates, but I still think it's important that we make sure that they get.
I still can. You want it to be sent off to,
Probably Richard.
okay. See if someone can come back with any comments, okay?
Yeah, just make sure that we're,
Sure.
we've taken that step.
The other portion of the loan in the discussion part is we currently have a small line of credit that has not been used. In fact, it's never been used. It was put in place last April as a just in case. We don't need it. We can get a replacement from CIT Bank. That will incur origination fee. We can get up to $250,000. Their fees will be somewhere in the neighborhood of $3,500 all in to get it. We don't need it. It's available anytime. So I'm proposing, I've mentioned it before, but now I'm proposing that we just delay that until a period of time that we might think it's a useful thing to have. And so do nothing because I don't want to incur fees.
Any other discussion, John? So, all in favor, moving forward with that?
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay.
The last thing before the town hall budget thing is the budgeting process. We've already chatted a lot about that. We're going to be, I think we're moving forward with a potential meeting next week, I believe. Talk about, I mean, number one, we can work with what we've got, but as much as anything, it's a strategy. What do we think we need to do in maintenance? And then figure out how to cost it out. Some of it might already be costed out. Bruce has done a very extensive job on this document. And Debbie has done a good job of putting in some stuff for maintenance or for the administration side of the business as well. So then it's just a matter of what do we think we want, we'll put numbers to it, and that'll form the basis of at least a draft for the town hall. Putting that in place will be fairly easy now that we have some of this detailed information.
Debbie, could you make sure that gets on everybody's calendar? At least those on the board that want to participate in it. And I think that the maintenance committee should, for the most part, be involved.
And then lastly, has it been discussed or decided when the town hall meeting or meetings are going to be?
Could I just talk, is that okay? Can I talk about it?
Yeah.
Okay. Looking at, I was going to talk about it a bit in the elections report, but here are the date, you know, we have the timeline. All the material must go out to the members on the 30th of September.
This is for the AGM.
For the AGM, which includes budget.
Yep.
So we've said on the timeline, which the board approved, that we would have all the material approved by August 24th. Now, as I've listened to all the moving pieces going around, I'm wondering if you might think of moving that final approval date a bit later in order to have the budget meetings that we're committed to having. So because you've got an August meeting, board meeting is scheduled for the 19th, I believe, of August. You're away until the 13th.
Well, yeah,
13th. I think to try to have, well, have one meeting and then make all the revisions and bring a final budget to the board that same week is probably a bit of a steep hill to climb. So I'm wondering if you wanted to have maybe a special meeting in early September, or leave the budget approval to the September date, that it's the 23rd and the packet has to go on the 30th. And so and Lori is just going, because it's a lot of material to put together for that final big packet that goes out.
Are you saying, Helen, the board meeting's on the 23rd of September?
Yes. And that's pretty late to give just 1 week for the packet to be put together. So if you wanted to move the final budget approval to early September rather than the August meeting, or even a week later in August, that might work.
Excuse me, Helen,
Yep.
I have the third
Which is the
week
16th.
is the 16th.
16th, okay, 16th, not 9.
And I was thinking it was the third.
Oh, of
Thursday as well.
September. Oh, I took down the wrong thing.
Yeah, so I
That
think
would-
if we do it on the 16th, then that
would
gives,
work.
that's 2 weeks, which is more than adequate to put stuff together.
Lori, would that work? If she puts the election stuff together? If everything was approved on the 16th of September, you could pull it all together to get it out to the members in 2 weeks? Yep.
Well, everything will be prepared for the election ballot before that. So putting that all together and working with our publisher, that should be fine.
Okay, that's good.
So our town halls then would be on the
They-
first week of September and
Yeah.
the week of the 16th.
Or I would suggest they be August and September.
That sounds,
Yeah.
later in August,
Later
maybe
in
after
August.
our board meeting, and then, because then we can do final prep for the town hall.
Yeah.
And then maybe one in early September.
Yeah.
I know that's Labor Day
So-
or something like that.
I'm just trying to look at the calendar.
Trying to figure it out. So when are we proposing to be the town halls?
Okay, so the August board meeting is the 19th. And the September morning meeting is the 16th. So if the board met on the 19th and discussed the budget once again, and said, yeah, this is now ready after the working meeting and whatever to take to town halls, then we're probably looking at a town hall the week of the 23rd and then the week of the 30th.
Is it the week of the 30th Labor Day week, or is it
No,
just
it's
before
not.
Labor Day week?
It's
Okay.
before, yeah, because the next week is the Labor Day week,
Okay.
and that's probably
When you
not.
say the week of the 23rd, and are we planning to do within the week, or are we planning to take a weekend? What are we going to do that? What have we done before?
Sometime during the week.
Yeah, sometime during the week.
What has done previously, we never have had a town hall regarding an AGM, previous an AGM.
We've never
correct?
done it.
Okay,
Wouldn't an evening be better if it's during the week, an evening rather than during the day?
I would think so.
I believe so, or
Yes.
to have as many residents maybe be able
so
to.
can we make a
If we have
decision then, just to specify it and just right now put it on the calendar so we can start preparing? So August 25th and the Wednesday, middle of the week, evening, 6 o'clock. Would that be possible?
Well, let me just ask this question. If we go into the meeting on the 26th and we determine that there needs to be some significant modification of the budget for the next following week, does that give us time to get that done?
You mean the 19th?
We're talking the 19th of August,
19th.
right?
No, if we have our first town hall on the 26th
Yeah.
and we find that there is a sense that we want this changed certain ways, does that give us enough time to come back on the week of the 30th? On the second town hall,
Oh,
to
I see
have
what
that
you mean.
completed and to present back.
Oh, I thought you wanted early September, the second one.
The week of the 30th. So
Yeah,
that might be-
which is-
that might be
That is-
September.
The 1st of September is a Wednesday,
So the question is, do we do it back-to-back weeks or do we do it?
10 days.
So from my perspective, I'm not looking at it as an iterative process, just like you did the first two town halls where you repeated it. I'm looking at it as a repeat performance where there's going to be some people who don't show. Now, the second one could be an iterative one to the first, or the same one as the first one for people who weren't able to make the first one. And then we can say there have been some adjustments or thoughts or whatever that people have brought forward, and we'd like to hear your thoughts for the people at this one. I'm not saying that's the way we do it, but I'm not looking at the next one being, well, 20 people showed up to the last town hall, and so we modified it because that might not be applicable to people who show up to the second one.
Having two the same failed miserably
Yes,
the
it
last
did.
time, and with money at stake, it's not gonna work at all.
Yeah.
So the second one has to be responsive to what was heard at the first one.
Yeah.
And a couple of weeks between them would make.
Okay, then we
Why
would need
not?
a couple of weeks.
Why not then taking the Wednesday that Patricia has suggested, Wednesday, August 25th, and Wednesday, September 8th. And that's, and then that means,
Still 2 weeks until the board meeting.
and then the board has a week to do the final approval so that it can go, because it's the 16th.
Sure.
Would that work?
Yeah, I think those are good.
Okay, so August, is 6 o'clock a good time? Or 7 o'clock? I never know.
6 o'clock.
Okay. Okay.
Anything else, Joe, on the financial
The question
report?
is where they are.
I believe I am done with the financial report. I think I moved.
Thank God.
Then I believe I moved to the finance committee, and the only thing I have is I would like to make a motion to nominate April Hashimoto to be on the finance committee. She has already agreed that she would. I have been having significant troubles getting my quorum together because one person is always not available. So you could ask the question, might that person be on the finance committee going forward? And my comment is, we'll see. So I'd like to make a motion to have April Hashimoto join the finance
Is
committee.
there a second?
Second.
Any conversation about that? I'll just say that having worked with April, I think she'll be a great asset to the committee, so.
Thank you.
All in
Doug,
favor?
go ahead.
What was that?
Lauren, was there?
Well, I just want to make a request to the board because of this new sound system and the new way that we're doing the Zoom. And when we go to do the minutes, it's maybe harder to identify. I believe that that was a motion made by Joe, seconded by John. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, but in future with all the motions, state your name and say, I so-and-so make this motion.
Will do.
And state your name to second. It'll make it easier when we do the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed to April? Okay, good. All right.
You say congratulations, April.
Oh, she's still there?
She's there. She's just muted and without her camera.
Thank you, April, for stepping up. All right. Is that all, Joe?
That is all.
Steve, AFC.
Yeah, I have 3 things to report and 3 minor wording things to ask for approval on. We're essentially done with the draft revisions on the standards for residential construction and landscaping, and very close on multifamily construction. So we plan to get other stakeholder input, asking some people, some builders and other homeowners and perhaps a realtor to give us input on them. My question is, when would the board like to see these, and in what format would you want to do a review of the new document?
And these are the ones that are in the board packet?
They're not in the board packet.
No,
No.
Okay.
he's talking about 3 other topics before we get to.
Yeah, before we get to
Oh, okay.
So it's just a guidance. We could give you, we can give you red line versions that people could look at and just give us feedback and not have to bring it to a board meeting.
That would be my preference, is to do it via email, you know, and redline them, and then
bring it.
and then so we have a final document. So that
And then when we
deliver this.
deal with all the input and come up with a final version, it will come for approval. Okay, that's good. A longer term issue, but it's come up a couple of times in the last month. We have significant uncertainty about the relationship between the ASC approvals of things and the neighborhood HOA approvals of things. And it's inconsistent in the neighborhood CCNR. Some of them say you have to go to the ASC for approval, and some of them are blank on the topic, and our CCNRs are blank on the topic. We need consistency and guidance as to, so for example, Melrose takes care of all the yards. And so they actually have the right to take down a tree without theoretically without even asking the homeowner. They did take down a tree. They had approved it within the neighborhood of the HOA. The owners were in California and didn't actually know that. They have very kindly retroactively requested tree removal permission. But these are the kind, and then there's a new, as you drive down Drayton Harbor, you'll see there's a very nice wall along across from the Drayton Hillside 3 gate. We noticed that. And so we really need to figure out, and we need to know what the board wants us to do. Do the neighborhood HOAs need to make approvals and just notify us? Do we have to approve them also? Do we just get notified and then just look at it and say, okay, that fits, or whoops, there's a big contradiction with the overall CC&Rs? It's a sticky.
It would seem to me that you've got SRA as an overlay of everything. And even though you have communities within the SRA, ASC is part of it, the SRA control. And it would seem to me that there in a community, there'd be a 2-layer approval, one at the community level, and then it comes to SRA for SRA approval.
I think it's implied by the statement in the CC&Rs that the ASC rules dominate, but it's not well understood and it's not clear.
Some NHOA rules that are stricter and more restrictive
Right,
than the SRA, and they say those apply, not SRA. So I think I remember having this conversation somewhere when we were doing strategy stuff or something. It's not actually an overlay the way the NHOAs
It is,
are.
because those are automatically compliant with the AS
or they go further.
Or they go further.
Okay.
Than the ASC rules.
Okay.
So that's not a problem.
Okay.
Well, we don't know about them.
So what was the question, Steve? Was it a question that the board needs to?
Should that be referred to governance to straighten it out? Can we just send a message out to everybody that says, please notify us when you approve, so that we can be sure it's compliant with the overall CC&R?
I would say that's what is in our governing documents. We should do that. If we feel that there's a communication breakdown, let's build that communication.
It was my understanding, Steve, that they go first to their condominium association and seek approval. And then once they've reviewed that, they come to the ASC.
But that's clearly not the practice now. So we can send out a reminder to everybody that unfortunately will increase our business, but probably not a lot. Okay, is that? That's the understanding? Okay. Just to briefly update on the Carnoustie buffer situation. The position, the ASC has been asked by several members to review the situation. So it's our responsibility to respond to those member requests. The ASC's position is we are in no position to impose a solution to the various multiple concerns about the buffers between St. Andrews Green and Carnoustie. We are willing to try to get a straight set of facts and facilitate discussions that might lead to a long-term stable understanding of the situation, what the rules are that govern the existing buffers and how that's supposed to be handled. But we have no intention of imposing a solution. And the main reason for that is that city, this board previously, and before any of us were part of it, and the ASC, before, I think before any of us were part of it, all signed off on the current buffer situation, that it's okay. So that obviously is not an accepted position by a number of our members. So we're trying to facilitate a calming of the waters and a common understanding of what's going on. It's not being accepted that way by everybody. And so we're going to try to communicate that much more clearly.
Is that more of a concern with the city rather than with the SRA? Because it is a plat, it's a platted buffer and it has nothing to do
But
with
the
that.
city has washed their hands officially in writing.
Can you have one sentence about what the issue is exactly?
Yeah, the buffers were, the rules about the buffers were violated in the construction of a number of the homes on Carnoustie. And some efforts were made to replace trees that should not have been touched and that sort of thing. But a number of people on the St. Andrews Green side are not content with.
So the buffer was diminished in opacity?
Yeah. And there are two buffers. There's one that can be modified with ASC permission, but some of the houses actually appear, we haven't resurveyed, but appear to actually be in that buffer. And there have been actions from Carnoustie owners in the buffers without ASC permission. There have also been invasions of the buffer that's not to be touched from the St. Andrews Green side, which is not even their property, and it's not supposed to be. It's a mess, and we don't want to get into it legally. We would like to see it settled. The common understanding that things happen, that can't be changed, and by airing those, by agreeing on a common set of facts and airing those issues, perhaps we can get it settled down. But we don't want anything to do with legal action. Any legal action would be individuals against individuals.
Yeah, I guess goes to the fact that the Carnoustie HOA has never been incorporated.
But it still exists.
Yes.
Yeah, so how does that organization actually get organized and act as a organization?
So that's what we've been occupying our time with. We have three wording issues that require approval. The first is this small change in the tree removal policy, part of which is to just simply change the name of put the correct name of the form in section E, and then to allow for the ASC administrator to approve removals that clearly meet the dead, dangerous, or diseased criterion. And those will go on the consent agenda for the ASC. They'll be reviewed by the committee, but in order to speed things up. And this is all about trying to make things go faster and easier. So our request is to make those wording changes in the tree removal request form.
Is there a motion to?
You just made.
I made a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
A second, Jane.
Jane seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay.
Good. The second is a change in the procedure for submitting landscape plans for new construction. And that is that we need to have them submitted at the same time that the housing plans are submitted. The main reason that's pushing this is the change in stormwater regulations, we are now seeing regularly stormwater requirements, rain gardens, bioswales, and that sort of thing, that affect where drainage systems are put from the house and that sort of thing. There's no opportunity to change that in the landscape, change the landscaping to fit that if we don't see the landscaping plan at that time. They can always change the plan and come for approval. I mean, we get changes in construction all the time too. So it simply is that we want the plans at the same time.
So these changes are,
This would be a change in the standards for residential, the current standards for residential construction. They will be incorporated in the future changes, but we need it now.
That's page 18, yes.
So, yeah, so I move to change the landscape plan submission time to be the same as the submission for the construction plans as shown on page 18 of the packet.
get that, Lori?
It's the resolution, it's right there.
Okay, all in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
And
Excuse me, Stephen, may I make a comment that because this is a fairly large change, that we communicate that to the community, not just leave it in the standards, or did you have a thought on that?
we can certainly put it in our tip of the month, but the community isn't actually the audience. It's people who are
This is new construction.
It's new construction.
Right, but we have undeveloped lot owners who are going to build so that they're aware. I'm just making so everyone's aware.
And the
Great suggestion.
on the third is we're having a rush of temporary structures going up in the yards this year. These are things like inflatable pools, inflatable slides, tents for receptions, that sort of thing. And we think that the current rule on temporary structures, which says no, is a little harsh for that sort of thing. And so we would like to define temporary by saying temporary structures that have one wording addition to this. Temporary structures are permitted for a maximum of 1 week. We'd like to put parentheses 7 days. It doesn't get interpreted as a work week. And so that we could split those 7 days into 3 and 4 days, or 2, 4, 6, and 1, that sort of thing. So that it would say temporary structures are permitted for maximum of 1 week, 7 days, duration per month. The ASC office must be notified prior to putting up a temporary structure. This would allow for grandkids on the weekend, wedding receptions, graduation things. But we would know about it, and there's a time limit on it. That's a cumulative 7 days during the month. So the resolution would be the board of directors approves adding this clarification community rule regarding temporary structures.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
Second?
Jane, second.
Jane seconds. All in favor?
Thank you.
That everything?
That's it.
Okay. Ellen, elections.
Yes. Very quick report, because we've talked about community meetings. Just to say the annual general meeting process is well underway. As you know, the letters went out to everybody. And then the community alert went out as a follow-up. And then we got a bonus yesterday with Jane's piece in this week, which was great, because we need candidates. And for those who are watching, please consider running, or give people, you know, people who have the qualifications, the experience, the interest to do this work, to please call, email, drop in to see Lori and get an application form. applications or nominations close on the 30th, and we're not there yet. So we need more people to step forward to do the work. And well, we all know it's really, really important work. So thinking caps on, members of the board, for people who you would like to see. The elections committee are out there. We're trying to beat the bushes too and think of people and invite them to consider. So I really ask you to do that. The other thing is those community gatherings, August 25th and September 8th. I don't know, does this move over to you, Patricia, on communications now, organizing them, or does it go directly to staff? Maybe it goes directly to staff. Smiles. But the question is where? Are they going to be hybrid? Are they going to be Zoom? Mr. Treasurer, they'll cost money if they're not Zoom. So what is the best way of doing this? And I think that's a very, very important question, Mr. Chairman.
So we're talking about primarily the AGM meeting, correct?
No, that's budgeted. We're talking the town halls, the community gatherings. Yeah. August 25th and September 8th.
I would suggest Zoom.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, why do you believe that it's going to cost money for sure if we've got the whole upstairs that theoretically could be used? I'm just asking a question. I'm not pointing.
Because then is that, no, that's a.
Not a good place.
Depends on how many people show up, you know. I think the Zoom is probably,
Yeah.
and the other thing with Zoom, you can actually put the documents up on the screen. It's gonna be, it's gonna be easier for people to see, I think, present.
And record feedback too.
Yes,
For
that's.
review.
But will we be able to be here?
You can do it just like we're doing.
Like we're doing this meeting or something similar?
That would work well, yeah. Then
Yeah, I think that's fine.
let's do it Zoom. So those are 6 p.m., August 25th and September 8th. Zoom with the members of the board, and maybe you want finance committee members here too, in here, I don't know, for those town halls. And so the organization and the publicity now goes over to staff, correct? We made the decision?
Publicity will be in charge, community,
Communications is taking it
Yeah.
over, great.
and then the organization probably stuff.
Great. And then we'll pull education, we'll pull everything together for the packet when it gets there in September. We expect to have all the nominations close on the 30th. We'll have all those things done early in August so that that piece is done, complete. Bios and photos are all together. So that bunch is done. So that's my report.
Thank you, Helen.
Thank you.
Patricia, communications.
Yes, we
Sorry, Luke,
have.
wait.
Sylvia, she's not sleeping already, so she would like to address. Yeah.
I haven't met everybody.
This is Sylvia, Aiden.
Jean. Nice to meet you. And Jane. Yes, I know everybody.
Sylvia does great work.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Very nice of you to say that. Well, Jane did great work. We asked her last night, yesterday afternoon, to please write something that we could put out.
Do a dart at it.
And it was so well written. You can join us anytime you want. So this is mine. Did you pass it out, Debbie? I don't know. Okay. Yeah, I have my own copy. Thank you. The reason I'm here today is the primary purpose is so that so many of you are new to the board since the communications committee was established. And so it seemed like a good time to just kind of fill you in on what our work is, because the whole point is to support all of you and to support our residents. And so I made a little handout today. I didn't get it done in time for you to get it electronically. I apologize. But I think the main thing is I put the committee purpose, just if you haven't seen it, and the big thing is in bold. The committee is responsible for developing and maintaining channels of outbound and inbound communication between the board, its committees, and the residents. So, and one of the things that we have found is that it's really, really important that anything that any of you want to send out to the community goes through the communications committee. And that's just there so that our message is consistent. Sometimes people have difficulty figuring out what are the words they really want to use. We can help with that. So if everything goes to the chair, in this case, it's Patricia, and the executive director, because of course, Debbie has to be informed on everything that's going around for her to be responsive to us. So here's what we've got. Just a quick overview. The SRA website is in the process of being, we're working really hard to figure out a way that it's going to be really, really responsive. So if people go, oh, what was that thing that the ASC is doing? They don't have to call Debbie. They don't have to call Steve. They can go to the webpage if we can get them trained, and they'll go, oh, this is when the meeting is. Oh, that's what this new ruling is. Oh, this is where I can see the finances for this month. So that is our primary home for our information. It is where everything is also archived. So if you have committee reports or any documents from the work that you're doing that you want to make sure residents can have access to, it goes to the webpage. Right now, we don't have anybody on the communications committee that is directly involved with that, because we really need professional expertise. And that is a budget item for us. That I know we have Jacob working on it. But in talking with Justine about it as well, she was saying, you know, we need about an ongoing 10 hours a month to keep that web page going, so that when you've got an update, someone's there to update it. Minutes can be put on there quickly. So that is one of our expenses, which probably comes out of administration. So after you go there, the next thing that is the ongoing is the semi-e-news. And I know some of you are going, oh, really? We're being asked to submit something to it. But the whole idea of why this was created with a strategic plan was so that people could, especially after the big hoopla of the last couple of years, to be able to once a month say, I know what's going on in my community. And it all sounds pretty good. I can be a happy camper living in Semiahmoo. That to me is the #1 goal. I'm informed. I've got a pause. I'm hearing positive things about our community. And if it isn't positive, we'll work on that too. But the whole idea is this is a quick front page of everything that's going on. So because it's me as the editor asking you to write for it, I'm not asking for your detailed, oh, that's what's going on, and these are all the reasons why we're doing it, and da-da-da. That kind of information belongs on the webpage. Semi-e-news is strictly, I was just wondering what maintenance is up to this month. What have been the things? Oh, well, streets, the street cleaners are here this month. We're working on cleaning up this and that. We're concerned about this, so we're working on this. So that's all it is. It's like 3 or 4 sentences. And I put it in here in terms of, if you think about, unless there's something really specific, like Steve has established ASC tips. So if there's not something that we need to know specifically to our ASC, he puts in, which I think you've all seen, they've been great, and they've been really well received, Steve. Here's just a tip of what you could know in a timely way. So it isn't a big thing. We're talking about, I counted up my words on this page for a couple of the paragraphs, 150 words. That's what we're talking about, not a big thing. I need that by the 25th of every month. And if there's something specific that we know we need, and I will contact you. If we're hearing something through communications, because we meet before then and we go, okay, what are the hot issues that we want to address in the semi-e news? So if you think about, this is what we've done last month, and this is what we're projecting this month, a couple sentences about each, or a hot item you want to calm down on, that's what it's for. The final review, so your paragraph, I'll call it that, comes to me. I format it all into the semi-e news, and then I submit it back out to the communications committee and to Debbie for editing and accuracy and all of that. So that's why, and we try to get it out on the first day of every month. So that's why the 25th is important, because it has to go through review. Now, if you've written something that I can just see a pronoun or something that needs to be changed, little stuff, I will do that editing. If it's something major, I will call you. If I'm saying this is too technical, I may write it and send it back to you and say, is this okay if it goes out this way? So I'm your catch-all. If you have something you want to write about and I don't have time, all you have to do is just send me. Could you write up something for ASC for me with these bullets included? And then I will put it into the format so that the whole thing has cohesion. So we don't hear Helen's voice in one paragraph and Bill's voice in another. What we want to do is hear the board's voice at the e-news. SRA this week. If you have information that can't wait until the first of the next month, that's when the SRA this week fills in. It is produced by Lori with Debbie's support. So anything that's going to go into the SRA this week it goes in there because it cannot wait for the timeliness of it for the following month. So that's kind of an easy way to think about which vehicle you want to use. The information goes to Lori and Debbie. They check it over. If they think that it follows the guidelines, then they send it to Patricia, who's the chair, and she reviews it on behalf. It's all just to make sure that everything is cohesive and positive. So we're not trying to make any extra work. We're just trying to be transparent with our community. And then finally, we have SRA community alerts, and those are strictly urgent. So a budget item is probably not worthy of an urgent announcement. Unless suddenly, Joe, we're in free fall. And then if you want an urgent one, I think you could get it approved. So those are really emergency things that we need people to know right away. And they require the approval of the chair. We've also had in the past that the president, whether you want to be involved or not on that. So that's your kind of emergency thing. And then finally, the bulletin boards. We are in the process right now, putting another thing on Bruce. We're trying to figure out how we can get away from those crummy plastic signs on the gates that get wet. You can't read them. They go behind the bushes. They come back out. So we are presently, we've got metal frames that are locking, that are just, in fact, it was in here, is it? Right. Oh, Patricia's my show and tell. This is what we're looking at putting at the outside gates. It would be hooked to, attached to the keypads. Something like that. Something like that.
still kind of a working process. We have not really determined that this is how it's going to
No,
look.
right
But this
now,
is just,
yeah.
you know,
Right now,
something that we're
Bruce
looking at.
is, sorry.
No, this is, go ahead, Sylvia.
No. Bruce is like the post. He's working on how waterproof these are, how they'll stand up. The idea is not that it ever has a piece of paper like this in it, but that it says town hall tonight, 6 p.m. Zoom. That's it. So it's not going to hold up anything. It's just to get those immediate things that are needed. So that's what we're working on. So I'm opening. Any questions or anything? I hope that's helpful.
I have a couple of questions. So, when you look at, like you guys look at a monthly basis, a weekly basis, how does it wrap for an annual basis? I'm just wondering, because
We've never addressed it.
So as I look at things, or, you know, being part of safety and security committee, like I think of things that happen just within neighborhoods nationally, and then how they come into our neighborhood, or how we communicate it, or, you know, like block watch as an idea. But just something to think about.
So I'm not quite,
that.
I'm not quite sure what your question is. Use block watch as an example.
I'm using block watch as an example, but the question is on an annual view, how do you wrap your communications? Or do you? So instead of looking at like your articles or individuals contributing, it's you have on an annual basis, you've got, you know, what you want to kind of communicate, you know, seasonally, and then you kind of plug those in along the way. And I'm wondering if you've built out a calendar so that it is fashioned that way.
It's a really good idea. I think we haven't been doing this long enough to think that far in advance, since we've only been doing this a few months. But I think it's a thing we naturally do as we plan ahead. Like at the last meeting, Patricia had 3 months plan. Is this what we want to emphasize over the next 3 months? And that's the first time that's been brought to the committee that way. So
to your point, right now, the strategic planning for the communications committee is towards the AGM. So right now we're trying to communicate as much as we can, but we also would like to limit the information that's coming out. So what we would like to communicate to them, to the residents, they're basically just summarize 3 items, or at least 2. We would like to get them updated with the elections, you know, with the dates and everything. But one of the things that we would like to emphasize, which I have asked John already for the next month, is maintenance. Maintenance is a very big hot topic at this moment. And we would like to be very transparent of what's going on. And we'd like to emphasize on that. That's for the month of August. And then, correct. And then we have on the month of September, we have after our couple of campos that right now we are already have ahead and dates already set. We would like to have a nice summary or something that is coming out from the financial committee. So we would like to convey, just stay very limited on what we would like to convey. But right now I have done pretty much a 3 months layout of what is coming out and all that. After that, I think everybody's going to be more at peace and we can focus on different other things like environmental issues, a little more in details on probably the ASC or certain things. But right now, we just would like to limit what is coming out, being supportive to all our decisions from the board towards the resident. Yes, John.
Thank you. John.
Question and comment.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm not really crazy about hanging another thing on the gate with the keypad because most residents don't use the keypad and they're driving through. So I don't think it's going to get seen any more than the current ones get seen. Some communities have a mailbox, little kiosk with a roof, you know, where people are actually there and might be able to read it. That would seem like another suggestion, but not all communities have those.
Residents don't have them though. Mailbox kiosks.
Some communities.
Some communities do.
Yeah, but most.
But some.
Most of them don't depend, so, but most common item is just the gate.
Yeah, and one of the, oh, sorry.
And then following up with your request that I submit something for maintenance in August because of all the interest in maintenance right now. As we have seen with our prior discussions today and in other similar meetings, maintenance is a very complicated question right now with a million line items of moving parts and an unclear strategy. So I can't conceive of how to boil that down into a short synopsis summary of no more than 2 paragraphs and 150 words and convey anything that has any meaning whatsoever.
Well, in that case, we can elaborate, or you can sit with us and say, you know, this is my best way to communicate what we're planning to do.
My suggestion for some well, you brought up 2 different points. One is the whole idea of a big kiosk. I'll go there first. We rejected that as a committee because we have 26 gates. So we have to be able to reach people as they're coming into the community. So that's why we were looking at this. Secondly, in terms of the complexity, to me, that is what, this is a good example of how you could just bring it down in saying, we recognize maintenance is at the forefront of what people are thinking about. It's very complex. We are dealing with, and give 6 different items of examples of categories, and that, you know, it's being absorbed into the financial. I mean, that's what people want to know is for the semi-e-news and the feedback we're getting, and we're getting, I mean, I'm digressing. But anyway, I think as long as they know that you're aware of those issues, we don't have to give them every month everything like it's a committee report. That's not the point of this particular one. It's just so they go, oh, is anyone even caring about maintenance? Oh yeah, the maintenance department is looking at, you know, this and this and this and this and this as categories. That's what we're focusing on right now. And we're preparing next year's plan. I mean, that's the point of this. It's not to be the end all of information. That's what the webpage is for. I don't know if that's helpful.
I think that's terrific. Is that all from communication?
Yes, sir.
Sylvia, thank you very much. You did excellent work.
Thank you.
It's really good.
Oh, the one thing I was just going to add is that Lori and I are also looking at statistics. It's one of the reasons why we want to get the webpage redone, so that Joe, I've used you for an example. Joe gives the summary, and then I can link from the semi-e-news for someone who just wants to know, oh, okay, that's what's going on. Link it to the webpage, and then we can, once the web page is set up with individual links, then we can say, oh, you know what? 150 people went to the financial link to have more information. That will help us with the long-term planning of what's important. Right now, we only have overall Lori's semi-annual this week. She sends out about 1,000 emails, and about 1,000 people read it. So, so it's almost 100%. We've got about somewhere between 500 and 600 hits this past month on the semi-e-news. So, and Lori's getting good feedback from people talking to her about that they like that it's succinct, easy to read, you can scan it quickly. So I think these two strategies are working for us.
Thank you.
Thank you very
All
much.
right,
Thank you.
all right, Joe,
Yes.
I'm going to hear from you before you go to Oregon.
Well, you better, because it's 3 days from now. You need to do it.
Safety and security, Joanne, or,
Yeah, Jeff, and then we'll pass it on. So I think probably I was gonna make a comment of when we started these committee reports. I think we need to be brief with the committee reports. Of course, if we have a special guest, and that's different. Just so we can, so this is where we spend a lot of time in our meetings. So I'm not going to go through the minutes because they're in the board packets for both the governance, safety, security. So you've read it, so you know what the issues are. In terms of safety and security, Jane attended this last one because Jane will take the chairpersonship in my place. And so we're really happy that Jane was there. And as you saw, the meeting was right after the Florida disaster, the condo collapse. So we thought we needed to get our own hands wrapped around sort of all of the liabilities that we have as an SRA. And in case something were to happen, I think Steve brought that to our attention, and it was a good suggestion. So, so Jane's working with, now as chair of the committee, with Debbie and the team to do an inventory of all of these different liabilities and sort of know what our risks are and how we address those. There's some issue that arises. And then some of the other things, of course, we've got the Block Watch program that has not been shelved. We're going to move that forward. Jane will reach out to Blaine PD, and we'll sort of resurrect what we've been working on in the past on Block Watch program, which continues to be, as per our charter, sort of the primary focus of the committee. Some other issues just came up briefly, as you said, about the gate cameras in light of recent things that happened at gates. We discussed that. It was the consensus opinion of the committee that gate cameras were probably not the best solution to the issue. So if anyone needs more on that, we can have a side conversation with them. And I think that's in a nutshell kind of what we discussed in safety and security, which was just a couple weeks ago. In terms of the frequency, Jane may want to do more meetings. There is sort of a standard for that set out in the charter, but you have some flexibility in terms of how you want to do that. For the time being, I would like to continue to be a member of the committee, simply since that was the first committee I joined when I moved to Simiamo. That's safety and security in a nutshell.
terrific. And so the appointment of Jane to be chair of that is.
Do we need a motion? Or?
Is deemed
Yeah.
done.
I think we de-bureaucratize that.
I just think it's just an appointment. All right, then governance.
So in governance, we're doing another meeting. We had one last month. And since then, Debbie, there was a small issue with the tasking of one of the issues that we had identified in the minutes. So, but anyway, Debbie just sent yesterday to me what we requested. We want to try and get our hands around the fines and enforcement process, as well as sort of the universe of fines that are out there. And so as a starting point, we thought we'd collect all of that data from various places, CCNRs and different documents, sort of in one document. What are the current fines that are out there? And then another document is what's the process to enforce the fines? So I will be forwarding that to all of the committee members. Heads up. That was just sent to me yesterday, and then we'll convene a meeting to discuss it and see what we want to do in terms of, because basically right now, we're not exactly sure, where the bottlenecks are, and if we're, efficient in terms of follow-up, and is it a cumbersome process? And probably is a cumbersome process. So we're trying to identify these bottlenecks and then, address the bottlenecks either by amending certain things or, revising our approach or something of this sort. I think that's one of the main issues we discussed in the governance committee.
We've scheduled 2 town halls for finance. We are contemplating significant CC&R changes. Are we going to, one, are we going to make it? And 2, are we going to do a town hall about those?
Jeff, do you want to address what the discussion was about the CCNRs?
We didn't really discuss too much in detail about the CCNRs.
Yeah, the one thought that we all kind of agreed to is that the agenda has been so busy with all the stuff that led up to May, and then moving right into budgeting and trying to get our arms around maintenance, that the focus on CCNRs really need to be a 2022 initiative, not a 2021 initiative between now and the end of the year, because we just don't have the bandwidth.
I would just say they are things we can do that don't cost anything. They are actions we can take to make things simpler and easier, and gain efficiency without spending money. So there is potentially a value in having at least some portion of it done at the AGM, because it means we can talk about something other than money.
Okay, well, what I would suggest, not in this forum, then I suggest what we do is we put that back on the agenda for the next governance committee meeting, which I'll come back to you and we can revisit that issue. Because I've heard a lot of differing opinions about whether or not we should be doing CCNR visions and not, and so on. So I think we need to decide what it is that we need, that you want to address, and do we need to do it, or is it something that we don't?
Certainly, if there's a couple of pressing issues that we need to amend the CCNRs to cover, we can get our arms around that.
It's been 50% of the focus of the committee for the year.
Really?
To get these standards straightened out and usable and more efficient. And that sort of thing.
Debbie?
When you say standards, there's a conflict between the standards and the covenants, Steve, is that what?
Yes, it's moving a lot of stuff out of the CCNRs and into the standards so that they can be adjusted to current circumstances and changing circumstances without having to wait for the AGM.
I'll just comment that as you know, the last amended and restated CCNRs were in 2017, and that was a very major overhaul of the covenants. And that was a very long process leading up to the AGM. But since that time, there have been 2 different amendments. So I would think that to Doug's point, if you have something that's very clear and succinct to propose as an amendment, that would probably work. But if you're looking at major sections of the covenants, time is ticking, as Helen has.
Well, we're not going to be able to change the standards.
No, but
we're going to change the CCNRs.
If I may make a comment, just all the balance, that if you could do something and have it before these town halls, for late August, early September, move it up earlier in a package that is really well presented, and I think communications could help on that. These are changes to make the whole system more efficient and effective and easier for you, members. And present it that way, very clear cut, because a lot of them are, in some ways, they're housekeeping by moving them out of the CCNRs and into standards so that it makes it easier for people. I think that could be doable, because I must say, I would hate to think that the committee has spent half their time this year working on these to try to get the foundations redone so that we can move forward properly, and be told you can't do it. So if there's a way to pull that together and work with communications about.
What I suggest in the interest of time is that we discuss this at the next committee meeting.
Right.
Because I'm of the understanding, talking to Peggy Richter, who worked on the CCNR, that this is something that's very time consuming, it's very complicated, and she has the experience, I don't. And again, Steve, it depends on what it is and so on,
I
so.
agree, but there's an internal communication problem, because we could have stopped doing all this work months ago if we knew that we were a year off. And I mean, literally, we've had multiple extra meetings. People have spent untold hours.
Well, in fairness, I think that was discussed at the last meeting. That was my recollection. It's in the minutes from the meeting that we had decided that that was an issue we wanted to work on in 2022. The governance.
Steve, to your point, I think that what you're focused on, it would seem to me that that could be put together fairly succinctly without the governance committee. I mean, I think with the communication committee and everything, we could probably get our arms around that change. I think the discussion was really, what is the big overall overreaching discussion about CCNRs, our neighborhood CCNRs and our SRA CCNRs, and how we want to deal with that. So, and I think that dealing with moving the standards to a standards document is smart. Maybe we should evaluate that.
And elections will be happy to work with you as well, because it would end up being balloting.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up, Steve.
Yeah. That's all for me.
Okay, maintenance, John.
Thank you. I would like to propose a motion that we add Jonathan Huguet as an additional maintenance committee member.
Second,
Second, Patricia.
any discussion?
I thought he said he couldn't be available.
He's not full-time. He'll be available as particular issues seem suitable.
So, I mean, the rules say if you can't show up to certain number of meetings, you're automatically off. So I think you want him in a different status than member.
Why don't we approve him for the committee and then determine whether or not it's going to be a good fit for him, and if so, then he can be on it.
That would be my recommendation.
So
So that he can participate
Yeah, I mean,
fully in the meantime, and the committee may only meet once a quarter. That's what the charter says. So I believe that may well be doable for him.
I mean, we use a lot of people who are not members of the committee for their expertise.
That's my motion, and there's a second.
All in favor? Aye.
John, can we get his last name again?
I'll spell it. H as in Henry, UGGETT.
Thank you.
And then
Also, who seconded your motion?
I did, Patricia.
Thank you, Patricia.
moving on, there is a change to the maintenance committee charter, which is proposed. And in your packet, it deals with a problem of not being able to get a quorum. So this minimizes or changes the number for a quorum to be 3 people. And it also removes the prior stipulation that there be more community members than board members. So that goes away. So this change would effectively allow 2 board members and another member to have a quorum for meeting purposes. That's what this change entails. And I move for adoption.
Is there a second?
Joe.
Joe seconded that. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Passes.
How many members do you have?
4.
Total,
Yes.
including John?
That would make 5.
He'd make 5.
The charter calls for up to 7, I believe.
Maximum 7, yeah, I'm reading it now.
Anything else, John?
That's all.
Okay. Jim, or sorry, Bill. Bill. I went to high school with Jim McGillis.
You're excused. Responsibility then. I want to propose a similar modification to the environmental committee charter to reduce the number of members from 4 to 3.
Is that a motion?
Yes, I'm making a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Evening. Aye.
Sorry, Laurie, that's me.
Did you get that, Laurie?
Okay, that was Steve that seconded that.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I was scrambling to unmute myself.
Okay, anything
Okay,
further?
and we have currently 4 members in the environmental committee, so that allows us the ability to miss one of those members and still hold a meeting. And we already have a fairly low bar for the quorum, so we left that in place. And
Debbie?
we also need to approve the guidelines for maintenance of undeveloped lots, which, as you recall from last time, there was some confusion about the wording. This is now the correct version of it. I propose, I'd rather I move that we approve this.
Is there a second? Steve. All in favor?
Aye.
It's passed.
May
Debbie?
I make a request of each committee chair that if you could send either myself or Justine a list of your current committee members, we very much appreciate that.
I'll do that, Ruby.
Thank you very much.
Did the board vote on the approval of the reduction in members of the environmental committee?
Yeah, unanimous.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else to report?
Only that I'm working to have a environmental committee meeting in the immediate future. There's been a request that it be done on the weekends. We polled the committee and there's no objection to that. So it awaits Jennifer's availability. Do you have any information on her?
Yeah, she had a good follow-up today and is looking like herself, so
And she's home.
within a week or two, yeah.
She's home. So, okay.
Things are good.
That was the other criteria there.
Thank you, Bill.
That's all I have.
Terrific. All right, let's go to continuing business. Update on the Office IT progress.
First, I'll begin by thanking John and Patricia for their help and sorting out what we should do and how we should do it, and for bringing Edwin to us to implement those changes. We switched to GoDaddy and Office 365 Pro. We have shared files now, and we're basically working out the kinks. So,
Terrific.
short and succinct.
All right, is there any discussion about getting board members SRA email addresses?
We're talking about that, and there's a fee with GoDaddy, but there is not a fee with our current inner server. So that hasn't exactly been sorted out yet.
All right. Anything else on the Office IT? Okay, Jacob Lee, what is our status there?
I reached out to him today, as did Patricia, and I got a text during the meeting that there were some family issues that he was helping his mother with, and that he's looking to early next week.
Yes, he had mentioned that 50% of the website was done and he had like a mock-up to show us pretty soon. So I assume next week will be the date, and I will ask him to keep us
Did he give us an
updated.
indication of why we're kind of 2 weeks past due on his delivery on that?
He indicated last Friday he would have something.
Exactly.
He shared in the text that it was a serious family issue that he was dealing with, and I just don't want that to.
All right.
I mean,
Board of Directors meeting times, is 4 o'clock a better time for everybody?
Yes.
sure.
Want to stay with 4 o'clock?
For a 2-hour meeting, yes, for a 4-hour meeting. no.
I'm getting very.
I think we're just about to wrap
We're
up
in the
here.
middle.
Let's see. New business clubhouse point modification.
I'll take that real quick. You saw the information that they provided. I asked Bruce to meet with Ken Johns on site, which he did, and reviewed that with John, and they both found that to be a very reasonable request. And so it would meet the board approval because it's an Area street.
I move approval.
Okay, is there a second? That was Steve moved and John Palin seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Aye. I think you all saw the traffic on the elections committee charter review, where we had been designating the elections committee chair as a director non-voting.
No, a member.
No, and it showed up in the minutes as director non-voting. So the committee charter does call for it just to be a member of the board. And so I think you all saw the emails between Richard and everybody. So I think by just calling that role a board liaison for the elections committee solves that problem. And that eliminates any connotation that that person is a director. And so if there's any further discussion on that, let me know. I'll let you know if I get any feedback from the community, if there's a feeling that we need to do anything further.
And the mechanics for that would be to change the charter?
No, I don't think we need to change the charter. I think we just need to refer to that chairperson, Helen, as something other than a director non-voting. So
It's not addressed in the charter as
The
a.
charter says member, non-voting member, but
Yeah.
not a director.
and a member is the same as Debbie's status.
Yeah.
Or anyone else, but. Okay, executive session, I believe we have one or a couple of items for executive session. Well, these should be fairly quick, I would think, right?
Okay, I'm going to stop the recording and move everybody that is observing into the waiting room. If they stick around till after executive session, I will bring them back in to find out the results of executive session.
Move to enter executive session.
Okay, it's been moved that we enter executive session. Is there a second?
Jane seconds.
Is there any opposition? I think we're there, right? Are we in? Yeah.
Lori, are we good to go?
Give me a second to enable the waiting room and okay, we have 3 people in the waiting room, so
And is the recording off?
there you go.
Okay, great, thank you.
So I move that the board approve the fine that was discussed in the executive session.
Is there a second?
A second, Jeff.
All in favor? That was unanimous. And then the, let's see, Jane, do you want to make a motion on moving forward with the issue with the dogs?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to move forward with legal action for, I'm not certain of the name of the individual.
We won't use names,
Okay.
just the animal issue.
The animal issue.
Okay.
Any,
Is there a second?
John, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Those were our two issues. So the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Just as we're leaving, can I just throw this out on the table? We've used Richard, his services.
Just stop recording.
Is it recording?
Stop.